the Board of Supervisors to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Supervisor Giomi.
Here.
Supervisor White.
Here.
Supervisor Jones. Supervisor Shooty.
Here.
Mayor Bagwell.
Here.
A quorum's present.
Thank you so much. We're going to move on to agenda item number 3. If those in the audience could please limit their conversation so the rest can hear. Thank you so much. May I have Bruce Henderson, would you start us off this morning?
Good morning. I want to announce first that today is the National Day of Prayer. The Carson City observation will be at 11 o'clock in front of the Capitol building. And I'll also take this as an opportunity to wish an early Mother's Day to everyone who is here. Let us pray. Father, we are grateful for the privilege of prayer. We're reminded this day how much we need this worldwide. And we thank you for your presence and for your listening ear. We thank you, Father, for the mothers in our community. And we pray for their strength as they mold young lives. We pray that you be with us in our meeting this day. We need you. We need you daily. We thank you. We praise you. In your precious and holy name, amen.
Thank you so much. Mr. Yu, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. Okay, we are now on the first public comment period of the agenda. And today, I will take all those that signed up with number 1 in their order. So the first step is Miguel. Morning.
Good morning, Mayor Bagwell and the rest of the members of the board. My name is Miguel Camacho. I am the Chief Deputy Clerk for the Elections Division here in Carson City, Nevada. I just wanted to take a few minutes this morning to reference some upcoming important primary election dates and just talk about the primary in general. First of all, sample ballots will be going out approximately this Friday, May 6th, so voters could expect to see sample ballots hitting their mailbox as early as this weekend. Also, mail ballots should be sent out the week of May 16th, so residents here in Carson City should expect mail ballots around that time period. On to voter registration. The deadline for in-person voter registration is May 17th, 2022. Voter registration applications must be submitted to the clerk's office before that date. Any mailed applications must be postmarked on that date. Online voter registrations are still accepted from May 18th all the way up until May 31st using the Secretary of State's online website. That website is registertovote.nv.gov. Any new registrants wishing to register to vote online from May 18th through May 31st, starting June 1st. I read the wrong line. There's a lot of dates on my form, so excuse me. Any new registrants registering to vote online starting June 1st must appear in person at the polling location. The polling location is here at the Carson City Community Center within the gymnasium. Those people registering during that time period should bring a valid Nevada driver's license or ID to the polling location if they are appearing to vote in person. Same-day registration will be available at the Community Center beginning May 28th and running through June 14th during the regular polling location hours. That information should be listed in your sample ballots once you receive them. The last thing I want to mention is we recently found out there might be a few events going on during early voting, so it may be a little busy while we're doing the voting, but by all means, please come on down and vote in person if you'd like. Thank you for your time. That's all I have for today, so I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Next on the list, I'm sorry, Mary Bowers, you didn't indicate whether you wanted initial public comment or add an item, so I want to give you your add item. Okay. Yeah, you're going to have to tell me which item, so I call you. 14? Okay. Perfect. Okay, next is Nathan Harrison.
Good morning, members of the board, Madam Mayor. My name is Nathan Harrison. I'm speaking today on behalf of Agenda Item 18B, which I'm asking the board to consider and approve the potential acquisition of the Mason Lodge 80-plus acres in the Ash Canyon area. I'm here representing Senator Cycling. We are a youth sports organization, a team of about 18 to 20 coaches. We coach approximately 40 to 60 youth in our community, aged middle school to high school, and we're part of a regional competitive league. So basically, Northern Nevada and Eastern Sierra. We during probably July to autumn of every summer or every season, we're up in Ash Canyon pretty much 3 times a week using that open space or the parcel that's in under consideration. So that particular piece of land really affects a large number of our community, our youth, and our coaches. But in general, I also would say that it is would be beneficial to the community as a whole to potentially purchase that piece of property. There's a lot of folks that use that land. There's a lot of animals that are up there that we could potentially protect from development, environmental concerns, the plants and animals that use that land. So, like I said, I'm just asking you guys to potentially consider and approve that motion.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Pete Dongus. Sorry if I don't get the last name right.
Good morning. Is this on?
Green. There you go.
Okay. Good morning, Madam Mayor and the board. I'm Pete Donges, Carson resident. I'm also happen to be the trails coordinator for Muscle Powered, who has a very large stake in Ash Canyon and all over the region. I'm following in the footsteps of Jeff Potter, who's the father of our trail system that many of you probably know. I oversee development of trails on Prison Hill, Centennial, and the whole west side of the valley. We have projects like Capital of Tahoe and Lincoln Bypass trails being built right now, and a number of trails over on Prison Hill. Probably about 45 miles of trail that we worry about, either in the hole or out there being maintained. I strongly support the board's approval of the pursuit of acquisition of the land that's being discussed. I consider Ash Canyon and Eagle View Open Space to be a crown jewel in the open space program here in Carson. And it's much loved and heavily used, as probably a lot of you know, by locals and regional and national people. You might hear a story later today about somebody who travels miles just to go to Ash Canyon. And so I believe that those 80 acres and this whole EVOS, Eagle View Open Space area should be unified, should be made whole. I'm an engineer. I like to make lists. I turned in a long list of stuff, in the written comment for this thing. But and it's about enhancing the user experience, controlling the land up there, fostering quality trails, the economic benefits. Dave Peterson recently told me there's about $42 million in recreational tourism in the state, and Ash Canyon has a little piece of that. So it's really important, but there's a hidden story here about human capital, and that's really what I want to focus on fairly quickly here. If you look at our logs, recently we spent about 2,000 hours in human sweat in 1 year. At prevailing rates, that's about $50,000. If you look at the trails in Ash Canyon, there's about 8.5 miles. At prevailing construction rates, that's about $170,000 to build. It wasn't built with cash, it was built with sweat. And there's a huge community emotion around these trails. If you look at a particular story in Ash Canyon, it's really colorful. Jeff Potter and a bunch of other wacky crew leads were road trail builders back in the beginning and built a lot of the trails. The 80 acres has a slice of those trails, And if we lose that land, we fracture those trails, and the whole quality of the experience breaks. So please, please consider passing, support for this land purchase. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next on the list, I show Chris Carver.
Good morning. My name is Chris Carver. I'm a Carson City resident. I'd like to speak to agenda item 14. The proposed ordinance is an offense to those who hold sacred the right for free speech and the ability to seek redress from our government. While this is not a federal issue protected by our rights, the same principles apply here in Carson City. The core of this ordinance is that we will redefine what an aggrieved person is as a party to the issue before the commission or planning department, or one who possesses a real or personal property right that's adversely affected. It also empowers the director of the community development department with greater authority to unilaterally consolidate appeals and refine the appeals process. This ordinance comes before you not because you are a judicial body, but because you are the elected representatives of our community. You are the last line of defense for our concerned citizens and community advocates. Today, as you debate this bill, ask yourself who benefits. It is certainly not the public, despite what the Carson City DA asserted. It is more likely that the commissions and planning department are frustrated with the individual citizens and community advocates that slow the process of bureaucracy down, and that's a pity. But these commissions and the department are not elected. They are appointed or hired and therefore have no accountability except to the appeals process. No public accountability, sorry. These commissions and the department were established specifically to benefit the community and should include not only the developers and other factions that seek to use the resource of our city, but also the inconvenient rabble that finds fault with their actions or lack of them. Instead of developing a solution that protects our rights and everyone in this community, whoever asked the DA to prepare this sought to prevent the community that empowers them from having a voice. It's egregious on its face. Each of you sit here today because some part of our community advocated for you. Maybe they advocated against your opponent. In each case, it's because our community had a voice. Taking that voice away through revision of a law may make someone's job a little easier, but it's still wrong on so many levels that it should be beneath you to consider this ordinance. Moreover, as our elected representatives, you should immediately question the motives of any public servant who would seek to make their job easier and less accountable at the expense of the community. I ask you to do the moral and ethical right thing here today. Perhaps direct staff to study the issue and provide recommendations that empower our community members, but in any case, reject this ordinance now as an affront to our community and our shared values.
Thank you, Mr. Carver. Next, I have Bob Butner. You're on. Oh, there you go.
There we go. Thank you. For the record, my name is Bob Butner, a lifetime resident of Carson City. Thank you, Madam Mayor and Board of Supervisors. I adamantly agree with everything that Chris just said, but I'd also like to add a question. Did the DA spend as much time looking into Nevada Supreme Court decisions and discussions talking about the rights of citizens to be involved, to discuss, to appeal, to be redressed issues in their communities, as he did looking at one case in Nevada about what an appellant is? And I would ask you to ask him to do that. Let's take a look at what the Supreme Court has said about our involvement. He obviously didn't take a look at what Douglas County said in their issue before the Supreme Court on the slaughterhouse down there, because they made it very clear that the public's opinion mattered when they had issues that they needed to bring to a board. So I'd like to have him take a look at that. I doubt that he will, but that is all that I wanted to address. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Butner. Next, I have Lisa Taylor. It's what you said you wanted general public comment, and you can speak to any issue.
My name is Lisa Taylor, and I represent the Carson City Extension Office. I am your extension educator, as well as our Living with Fire program, which is not only a statewide program, but does specific education and activities with our fire and emergency city department leaders, as well as their employees. And I want to thank you for that ongoing partnership, because without that, we wouldn't have the support and the leadership that we need to help educate our community. We are very excited about this proclamation, which is coming up later in the agenda. And so I have left examples of our educational materials that could be helpful to our citizens, families, and business owners in protecting themselves and their homes and buildings. Whether they choose the right plants, we have a document actually to help people do that, or you actually think about building homes of fire-resistant materials, or readying your family members with regard to how to evacuate due to wildfire. Our citizens are being able to be provided with information and education to be ready for any wildfire emergency. I want to thank you again for the opportunity, and we're excited about being on the agenda later today.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Doreen Mack. Good morning. Green.
Now? Good morning. First of all, I want to say that all of you are doing a really good job, and I do know how difficult this position can be. But it is not an elite group. You represent our community, and we all voted for you, most of you. And so it's that gives us the ability to have a voice, and we do that through you. And thank you so much for that. And it is so important that you do not take that away. So I'm asking you to not vote to pass on this, on number 14. And please reject this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mack. I don't have anyone else signed up for general public comment, but I will make one last call in case someone came in late for general public comment. Come up and state your name, please.
My name is Johanna Foster, and I am going to discuss, my comments are on item 18B, potential acquisition of the Masonic property. I am Johanna Foster, an ecologist and retired biology professor, a hiker, and volunteer trail builder for Muscle Powered. Carson City's open spaces are major contributors to why our quality of life is high. These spaces are in our backyard and are easy to access within minutes. Free access makes outdoor recreation available to all residents, a win for everyone. In 2019, an ecologist colleague invited me to speak in the session she was chairing at the Ecological Society of America annual meeting. That year, it was in Louisville, Kentucky. Approximately 6,000 people regularly attend each year, so it is an honor to be an invited speaker for a session. My session's chair specifically invited me to describe how Muscle Powered successfully collaborates with Carson City to build public awareness and therefore increase public interest in habitat preservation with state and national entities. My audience included ecologists from a variety of nonprofit, state, and federal institutions, and public officials from Chicago, New York, and Atlanta. I received many positive comments about Carson City and Muscle Powered. Thus, Carson City received nationwide attention for its open space achievements. While maintaining and building trails as Muscle Powered members, my husband and I often encounter hikers, bikers, and runners who thank us for our work. Many times we discover that the users came specifically to Carson City due to its reputation for trails. Just last week, we helped a visitor figure out his desired path for a late afternoon bike ride. And we were in Ash Canyon at the point. That young man was from a small California town, 7 hours drive south of Carson City. He drove specifically to Ash Canyon. What better marketing do we need than that? Even though I've lived in Carson City 6 years, I still often stop and exclaim how lucky I am to live in Carson City and have access to public land. I am in support of Carson City using quality of life tax funds to purchase the Masonic property located in Ash Canyon. Thank you, Mayor and Board of Supervisors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Foster. Is there anyone else?
Hello, my name is Robert Harris. Thank you for taking my public comment. I didn't have time to show up early to sign in. First, I wanted to thank you all for whatever support you guys did to get the old hospital off of Fleshman, the big walls for the air conditioners. I hope that it's quieter this year. On Monday, we had a really large windstorm. We've had them before. It's not new to Carson City. But what is new is the development over at Anderson Ranch, and they scratched up the ground, and, well, there was a dust storm. We had about, I would say, 150 feet in the air. There was dust everywhere. You could taste it in your mouth inside your house. I have neighbors that have asthma, and they weren't too happy. So I wanted to, I guess, let everybody know that if they impacted or were impacted by this, you could call the EPA and give your complaint. They will be investigating if there was, I'm not going to say significant damage, but there was damage to some people's vehicles. Whenever we called the contractor for a 28-acre site, they had one water truck, which was obviously not enough. So if the board can in any way help, I would be very appreciative. We are going to have wind today and tomorrow, and we should probably have more water trucks out there making sure that the soil is damp so that we don't look like it's the grape of wrath in Carson City again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Okay. All right, I don't see anyone. All right, thank you very much. Oh, sorry.
Good morning.
I bet I can guess what you're going to testify on. No,
Very
surprise me. No, go ahead. Sorry, couldn't help it.
Like my hat reads, I am a member of Muscle Power. I am a member of the board of Muscle Power. Oh, thank you, Stacy. I follow your advice. My wife gave me the same advice, so she probably called you. Good morning, board. It's so great to be here. I was really taken aback by the change of orientation, but I think it works really well. It's great to be here. It's great to see your faces. I wanted to mention two things regarding item 18B that I haven't heard so far this morning. It's obvious that our interests have to do with recreation and the trails. But in addition to that, the city also have a great deal of other benefits out of the potential acquisition of that property, including the benefits to the water system, including the benefit of defining the historic width of Ash Canyon and controlling access, more importantly than even defining the width of it. Everybody knows Ash Canyon is the motorized use, the motorized route all the way up into Lake Tahoe and probably Stacy's favorite fishing hole. What everybody doesn't know is that it has never been really defined. You know, it's just if you have a vehicle that is the width of a cart, which was the historic use of that road, well, yeah, then you fit through it. This will give you the opportunity to define in accordance with our ordinance, 50-foot right away or whatever. And I'm aware also that the Just property, before doing some arrangements with the city for water utility infrastructure, was able of placing some restrictions of the road width and the capacity. The bottom point is it's very important for the water system for Carson City, not only for recreation, but because of other practical values, intrinsic values. I also wanted to mention that the open space ordinance and the tax, the sales tax measure allows for properties to be used for the conservation of view sheds. Well, the property is viewed not only from the city, but from the property, you can view most of the Eagle Valley, which is really important too, and allows for our residents to enjoy our beautiful landscapes without development. So those were the points I wanted to make, and thank you so much for your support.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Okay, we're going to close the public comment section of this. Oh, okay. Sorry. I'd really appreciate if you'd sign in. It helps us stay on task, but that's all right. Go ahead.
Thank you. I did sign in, but it was on 14A, and I didn't realize.
Changed your mind
this-
to do it earlier?
No, I still am going to speak on 14A. This is not regarding that. I'm in support of the acquisition of the property on Kathleen Franco Simmons, thank you. And I am a resident of Carson City. I'm in support of item 18 and the purchase of the Ash Canyon properties. I'm always in support of purchasing property for new trails and recreational opportunities in Carson City. I did want to let you know that I attended a recent meeting of the Open Space Advisory Commission and submitted to them a request to consider also purchasing property at the corner or at the bend of Carson River near Highway 50. It is for sale. This is a large chunk of property that is a bit of the remaining bit of the old historic Empire City. And because it's so close to the river and so close to the highway, it's a perfect, excellent spot for recreational opportunities and possible hiking and camping and RVing there. So thank you for considering that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Are we there? Okay, I'm going to close this section on agenda item number 5, and we're going to move on to number 6, which is approval of our minutes of April 7, 2022. Does any member of the board have any corrections, changes, updates? If not, I'll accept a motion.
I move to approve the Carson City Board of Supervisors meeting minutes for April 7, 2022 as presented.
I have a motion and a second for approval of the minutes of April 7th, 2022. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. We're now going to move on to agenda item number 7, which is our special presentations. And we're going to, I've got a pile full of them. This is a good day. And we're going to start with the first one. Being a proclamation regarding our drug court. So come down. I think the judge is here.
Yay.
All right, Judge Armstrong. Did any of the other? No? So I'm going to read a proclamation, and then we're going to let Judge Armstrong have a few moments to discuss this. Oops, let me get it in the right order. I said I was going to do that. You're going to be last in my pile because I started at the, here we go. Okay, whereas there are now more than 4,000 treatment courts nationwide. Whereas treatment courts are the cornerstone of justice reform sweeping the nation. And whereas treatment courts have served more than 1.5 million individuals, and they are recognized as the most successful justice system intervention in our nation's history. Whereas they save an average of $6,000 for every individual they serve. There are 5 treatment courts in Carson City. The Misdemeanor Treatment Court presided by Judge Tom Armstrong, the Mental Health Court presided by Judge Kristen Lewis, the Western Regional DUI Court and Drug Court presided by Judge Peter Breen and Judge Archie Blake. You? I thought so. And Juvenile Drug Court presided by Juvenile Magistrate Kimberly, no, I'm not going to get this right, O'Keezy? Okay, thank you. And I got to practice names in advance, I think. Whereas treatment courts facilitate community-wide partnerships, bringing together public safety and public health professionals to improve education, employment, housing, promote family reunification, reduce foster care placements, and increase the rate of addicted mothers delivering babies who are fully drug and alcohol-free. That's pretty amazing. Whereas treatment courts demonstrate that when one person rises out of substance abuse, use, and crime, we all rise, and today marks the 100th graduate for the misdemeanor treatment court. I know, pretty amazing. Now, therefore, I, Lori Bagwell, Mayor of Carson City, Nevada, on behalf of the Board of Supervisors, do hereby proclaim that May 2022 be established as National Drug Court Month. Wow, pretty fantastic. Thank you, Mayor. Really, really, all of you. Thank you for all you do. Thank you. And then would you like to say a few words?
I would. Every year, Drug Court Awareness Month, we come to the supervisors, and this year we're going to keep it short, we promise. We say that every year, and we don't every year, but this year we're going to. So you guys have a lot of work to do today. Mayor Bagwell, supervisors, I really appreciate you taking the time to hear from us today and for this proclamation. What we do for Carson City is important. What we do for, more importantly, we do for the people who participate in our drug courts and their graduates and their families and their children and all of us who care about our community is important as well. And I don't know of a better intervention in the criminal justice system than what we're trying to accomplish here in the drug court programs. And I appreciate most of you have come and sat through misdemeanor treatment court and watched and got, everybody was, I think, enlightened by the work that we're trying to do and by the people that we're trying to serve. And so, thank you. I'm not going to go over the numbers. We're not going to talk about that. Today, there's only one number that I want to talk about, number 100. I have with me a special guest today. This is Anissa Mendoza. She is a 100th graduate of the Misdemeanor Treatment Court program, and she is not just one of several. She is one of one. Anissa has run a perfect program. Anissa has reconnected with her family. She's fully employed. She has been exceptional in every way. And I cannot be more proud of what she's accomplished. And today at 10 o'clock, hopefully, we're going to be a little late today, she's going to graduate officially as our 100th graduate. A perfect program is all but impossible. We've had a lot of participants. We've had 100 graduates. We have had one other person who's run a perfect program. That means going through the entire year without violating even so much as a curfew. And it's exceedingly rare. Now, I don't put the expectation of perfect programs on anybody. That's unfair. Not everyone can do that. And sometimes setbacks are as we all know, are the way we learn. But it doesn't change the fact that what Anissa's accomplished is amazing. And I could not be more proud of her. And sometimes things line up. And in a certain ways that make you wonder why. We were talking about Drug Court Awareness Month. We're talking about, well, I had mentioned maybe having a graduate, maybe trying to plug in, do a graduation ceremony in front of you guys, but it's busy and we're busy. And it was like, well, who we have graduating? It was Anissa. Oh, Anissa from a perfect program. Oh, and she's the 100th graduate. I mean, it lines up perfectly in a lot of ways. I think it might be more than fortuitous. So I'm going to, if Anissa wants to say a few words, I told her she could speak if she wanted to. She doesn't have to. I don't want to put any pressure on her. But I wanted her, we talked before we came in, so we're good. But I wanted to say thank you to the supervisors for all of your support. I want to say thank you to the community for all of your support. The DA's office, Community Counsel Center, the Public Defender's Office. This is truly a partnership, the Sheriff's Department, Alternative Sentencing. It's a partnership across all agencies with the community, with the nonprofits, with all of the services we have in Carson City, both public and private. In case you couldn't tell, I couldn't be more proud of it, but that pales in the comparison to the pride I feel in having Ms. Mendoza standing here before you today and all she's accomplished, because this means a lot, not just to her, not just to her family, but to the ripple effect going forward for the rest of the time she can pay it forward in ways, large and small, seen and unseen, in ways that are really hard to comprehend. So that's all I have to say. Thank you so much. Anissa, you ready?
Yeah.
She's so cool. Here you go.
Hello, my name's Anissa. I'm super excited to be here today. It's amazing the chance that I've been able to have in misdemeanor treatment court and to have an amazing judge and learn through all of this and be here today. Like I said, I thank God and my family and everybody around me, and I'm excited. Thank you.
We're very excited for you. Congratulations.
So, Mayor,
We have a picture? Absolutely. We need a picture.
Some community counseling people.
Come on up,
be in
take
the
some-
photo.
take a
They're
picture.
teammates of us in all of the courts, and I'd like for this to be good. Absolutely. And I'm going to have Ms. Mendoza's proclamation. You send that in there. Some of you can go on the other side. Yes, there we go. Thank you, Mayor. Supervisors, thank you so much.
Congratulations. Wow, that's amazing. You're off the program done. And me too.
Congratulations. Thank you, everybody. We gotta go. We gotta go to work, right?
He's gonna graduate. That's pretty exciting. If you want a second proclamation so that we can give one to her, we'll do that. Yeah, I'll send you the other one. Give her that. Perfect. Okay, well, that's just a good thing to do. That was pretty awesome, huh? We're going to move on to agenda item 7B, which is our presentation and proclamation for our Historic Preservation and Archaeological Awareness Month and the presentation of an award. So I happen to know this guy, so I'm not quite so sure, but we're going to give it a try. Okay, and actually somebody did good and had bigger print for me here. So, whereas historic preservation and archaeological awareness are effective tools for managing growth and sustainable development, revitalizing neighborhoods, fostering local pride, and maintaining community center character while enhancing livability. And whereas historic preservation and archaeological awareness are relevant for communities across the nation, both urban and rural, and for Americans of all ages and walks of life and all ethnic backgrounds. And whereas it is important to celebrate the role of history in our lives and the contributions made by dedicated individuals in helping to preserve the tangible aspects of the heritage that has shaped us as people. Now, therefore, I, Lori Bagwell, Mayor of Carson City, Nevada, do proclaim May 2022 as Historic Preservation and Archaeological Awareness Month and call upon the people of Carson City to join their fellow citizens across Nevada in recognizing and participating in this special observance. Okay, and this is getting really special. I'll call it good. You want to help me do this?
Sure.
All right. Do you want to talk about why
Yeah,
first?
First of all, May is National Historic Preservation Month. This year's theme, fittingly, is people saving places. Communities save historic places. And I'd like to say the Historic Resources Commission had the foresight to have that in mind when we selected this year's recipient of our Historic Preservation Award. We didn't, but we got lucky. This year's Historic Preservation Award, which we do every year, that acknowledges people, places, both new and old in Carson City that have met the standards of historic preservation. This year, we chose to honor the Bank Saloon, Aaron West from Nevada Builders Alliance, for their work on the saloon. All of you remember Jack's Bar. And when it closed, we had a building in town that was in serious need of repairs. I went in there before the renovation started. Pigeons really liked that building. Adam and his group came in. The Nevada Builders Alliance was great. Bill Miles took the lead. They came to the Historic Commission. We gave them their blessing for the project. They did this without any federal support. They were thinking about going after some federal grants, decided to just take the bull by the horns and do it. Throughout the project, I'd get calls from Adam or from Bill saying, hey, we found this. Can you come down and look at it? It was a real great project. We got to do some archaeology inside the building. They did a great job. And when you go by today, you can see how it looks. So thank you, Adam, if you'd like to come up.
Aaron?
Or Aaron.
I know. I don't even have to be a picture. This is pretty good to get the 2022 Carson City Historic Preservation Award for the Nevada Builders Alliance in appreciation of outstanding contribution to Carson City's historic preservation, including the preservation of the Bank Saloon. I know there was a lot of people in town that really wondered about the name, thinking they just were rebranding it. But I thought the uniqueness was that they actually looked up what the building was named originally and put it back to that historic. So just in case anyone was wondering where the name came from, they did such a super job on restoring the building, so they put the name back too, and I think that's pretty special. So, Aaron, on behalf of the community, thank you guys so very much.
I'd also like to remind the community that as part of Historic Preservation Month, we've once again initiated our scavenger hunt. This year's theme is character-defining features. So as you walk around the historic district, there's some pictures of character-defining features of properties in the district. We appreciate if everyone would participate. You can go to the city website, community development, and the hunt is there.
Perfect.
Just real quick, I want to thank everybody at the city and the community. When we had the opportunity to buy the building and started digging into it and started reaching out to see, what information we could dig up on it. It's pretty exciting to find out that when it opened in 1899 as the Bank Saloon, that there was an opportunity to go back to that. And working through, like Mike said, Historic Resource Commission was just phenomenal. Really appreciate everybody at the city that worked with us. And obviously it kind of grew in scale, and we know that there were some folks that, at the end of the day, the fact that there was literally nothing that could be saved within the building except for the rock walls. And we hope that everybody appreciates, what it looks like now. And then, working with the city and taking that extra step and the fact that we had the support of the McFadden family to then bring in the artwork that's in there. So we're told that it's the only bar/art gallery in the state of Nevada. So yeah, anywhere. So I hope you guys take an opportunity to come down there, and we're honored to have, Richard Brigale, the operator of Majituto. He's the operator of the bar. He's doing an amazing job. And so now, it's really become a destination with bringing in live music on Thursday, Friday, Saturday throughout the year. And so, yeah, we're just honored to be a part of it.
Thank you so much, and you have to have a picture because, if there's no picture, it didn't happen. May is a busy month. Can you guys tell? Okay. All right. So next, if I can have the Public Works team join me. Yeah. They only get a week, so something might be wrong with this, but yeah. Yeah.
We get a lot done in a week.
Oh, that was good. That was good.
Good answer.
That was good, actually. Look at this. This is pretty exciting. Is there anyone at work? Oh, no. Wow, check it out. That's all right. It's all right. My fault. Okay. So, whereas public work professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of Carson City, Nevada. And whereas these infrastructure facilities and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are engineers, technicians, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector, who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. Whereas the year 2022 marks the 62nd annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association. Now, therefore, I, Lori Bagwell, Mayor of Carson City, do hereby designate the week, May 15th through 21, 2022, as the National Public Works Week. I urge all citizens to pay tribute to our public works professionals and technicians, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contributions they make to protecting our national health, safety, and quality of life in Carson City. When anything is going on and we need them, they're there. So, hooray. Right? Yeah. All right. Who's taking the proclamation? Huh? Oh, you'll take it? There you go. There you go. I like it. Let's get a picture. They really are a phenomenal team that you as Carson City should be very proud of. They're there every day, keeping us safe and, I don't know, keeping the water running and bluntly the toilets flushing, and we need them. We need them. Thank you guys all so very much. Good seeing you. Nice to see you again. Well done.
Yeah, gotta stand up.
That's right. One of my students.
I figured. That's funny.
Okay.
There are so many.
We're just moving on now. Okay, our next one is, now something's wrong here because they only got a week and this one gets months. But we're going to have a proclamation recognizing May through October 2022 as the National Wildfire Awareness Campaign. Sean? All right. So whereas wildfire significantly impacts Nevada's environmental, economic, and social well-being, whereas residents must prepare to survive wildfire by ensuring proper management of vegetation surrounding the home and appropriate home construction and maintenance to resist ignition. And whereas residents need to work together to prepare their homes and communities to survive wildfire and commit to become fire adapted. Whereas residents can save precious time in an evacuation by preparing a go bag and family evacuation plan ahead of time. Therefore, I, Lori Bagwell, Mayor of Carson City, Nevada, on behalf of the Board of Supervisors, do hereby proclaim that Carson City supports the Nevada Wildfire Awareness Campaign from May through October 2022. This is a means for education and a call for residents of Carson City to act now to reduce the wildfire threat, prepare for wildfire, and become fire adapted. Woo, it's a mouthful. Do you have something neat for the campaign this time? All right. Oh, look at this. So the idea is that we're suggesting everybody go to livingwithfire.com to learn to prepare their go bags and evacuation plans.
Extremely useful website that will help you with everything. Livingwithfire.org is .com is an extremely useful website that will help anybody look at. There's sections on there on how to prepare your property to be fire safe and to prevent fire spread and the likelihood of your home catching fire. Also, ideas and suggestions on go bag ideas and how to evacuate, how to be prepared for evacuation. A lot of great resources. And the key thing on the bottom of this is all the logos. This is all about partnerships. And we're in this together with our entire community. And we live in a beautiful community in a beautiful area, but is also very prone to wildfire. So we ask everybody to go to Living with Fire and to do what you can to be prepared, or contact us. Rod will come out personally, and he's our best looking firefighter, so he will go out personally. And and he will help you looking at your property and getting prepared. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you guys so very much. I vote for no smoke this summer.
Yes.
All those in favor? Yeah. Last year was not good. Not good.
Yeah, we should just stay down here. All right. Well, now we got it the last one.
I know. You finally got the pattern. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna go to our last presentation for this agenda item, which is a proclamation recognizing May 2022 as Bike Month. All right, Muscle Power, get it come up? All right, you guys, this is pretty special. Come closer. I promise not to ride my bike over. Yeah. Whereas the bicycle is a healthy and eco-friendly form of alternative transportation and an excellent tool for recreation and enjoyment of Carson City's scenic beauty. And whereas Carson City recognizes bicyclists as legitimate roadway users who are therefore entitled to legal and responsible use of all public roadway facilities in Carson City, recognizing the use of bicycles as a viable mode of transportation, endeavors to promote safe and responsible bicycling, and is committed to incorporating the continued development of bicycle infrastructure through the implementation of the Complete Streets concept. Carson City has been designated as a bronze-level bicycle-friendly city by the League of American Bicyclists. And whereas creating a bicycle-friendly community has been shown to improve citizens' health, well-being, and quality of life, grow the economy, attract tourism dollars, improve traffic safety, reduce pollution, congestion, and wear and tear on our streets and roads. And whereas throughout the month of May, the residents of Carson City will experience the joys of bicycling through educational programs, community events, or by simply getting out and going for a ride. Now, therefore, I, Lori Bagwell, Mayor of Carson City, Nevada, do hereby proclaim May 2022 as Bike Month in Carson City. Yay! You guys worked so hard on our behalf. Really, thank you for your dedication of Muscle Powered. It's really been a joy to be a partner with you guys on not just bicycling, really on saving our trails, everything that you do for us. You're really a wonderful community partner. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I really encourage everybody to come out for Bike Month. I encourage the whole board to come out for the Celebrity Ride, which is the 13th.
Yeah, 13th.
Yeah, and hopefully, Lori, you'll come out. I know you had an accident the last time.
There's these people that like to ride really, really fast.
But that's okay. I'll ride with you. And I'm a little rusty. My knee's bad, my hip's bad, but I'm still going to get on and go.
We promise we'll keep Kenny away from you.
Is Kenny coming?
Yes, Kenny is coming.
Furlong. We're getting the sheriff on the bike again. And we're going to take the siren away from him. And we're going to have the fun ride. We're going to do about 3 different rides on the east side.
Right, I'll mention all of them.
Okay, but we're going to bring back the silent ride and the silent walk for pedestrians and bicyclists who've been lost to accidents. So come out for that. You want to say a few things? Of course he
does. Like the ex-chief says.
Get out your camera. I want you to take some pictures for the website.
Oh, Jim will too. I'm Juan Guzman, and next to me is Scott Bomer, and we have the pleasure of working with him when he was employed by NDOT, and we're even more thrilled that he's our partner now, allowing us to do bigger and more things with Carson City. I also see Robert Nellis. I cannot. This doesn't quite relate to Bike Month, but I wanted to tell you, Robert was responsible he was our sugar daddy. He was one of the people who funneled money after money as part of Q1 for us to be able to buy so much open space. Thank you, Robert, for your work, and welcome to the city, too. I don't know if you knew that. Anyhow, I also wanted to mention that our partnership with Carson City is really special because it allows us to do so many things. Not only with the Parks Department, which we just visit with them just about every day of the week, but also with the Public Works Department, are the engineers who lower their standards of intellect to our levels to be able to communicate with people like me who doesn't understand traffic warrants but just want it done now, indifferent of what a traffic warrant means. So thank you so much for that. And again, welcome, Scott, to our team.
Yeah, as Juan said, my name's Scott Bohemier. I'm the Safe Routes to School coordinator with Carson City Public Works. On top of Bike Month, we have Bike to School Day, which was actually yesterday, but I have 2 more events in Carson, and we'll be out riding bikes. So please, as the kids are riding their bikes, please pay a little extra attention, especially through this month, because we have a lot of programs coming up that will have a lot of kids out, a lot of students out riding their bikes. And I'll also be going to different schools to do bicycle education. As Juan said, we work in a partnership, and we're able to put on these rides and teach kids and get more people active. So,
Thank you so much.
One more thing, Lori. Thank you. I'm catching back, after I retired in 2014. So, rough fellows. Hi. This week we're holding a scavenger hunt for kids, and the activity includes just identifying key points, throughout the city, and then they'll bring the results Saturday, to the Gear Swap, which is an event at the Brewery Arts Center parking lot, where we have bicycle gear, and we'll also celebrate the scavenger hunt results with those kids. The celebrity ride is on the 13th. It's a Friday at noon, McFadden Plaza. The ride of silence is the 18th, which is a Wednesday, and is about 5 p.m., 6 p.m. They have a celebration party on the 20th, also around the McFadden Plaza. That is also a Friday. The 21st is really busy. Kids Bike Day, an event put together by park departments and Public Works, helping kids celebrate bike safely. That's a Saturday. And we're going to man a station as part of a semi-professional bike race. Justitina Pay Dirt is called the event, and we'll be up in the boonies giving water and refreshments to the participants. The East Side Ride, which is one of our most popular events, consists of about 3 different fat mountain bike and skinny bikes, or mini road bikes. Event is going to be on Wednesday, the 25th. Bike to Work is, I believe, the week of the 19th. So with that, again, thank you very, very much for your cooperation and your participation in Bike Month.
Thank you, guys. Again, couldn't do it without muscle power. Thank you very much. Okay. Which was hard to do. There you go. Thank you all so very much. Thank you, Juan. Thanks, Charlie. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Scott. Mm-hmm. You can tell that things are happening in Carson City in the month of May. So if you're bored, you didn't try very hard because there's a lot to do. Okay. Oops. Give everyone just a second. Okay, we're on to agenda item 8A, which is discussion and presentation regarding the Nevada League of Cities strategic plan and the implementation of the One Nevada Plan. Mr. Harper, the executive director, is here. Would you like to present? And it's green, so you're good.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Thank you, Board of Supervisors. Thank you, Madam City Manager. And thank you, Mr. Deputy Chair, Chief Deputy. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you this morning. My name is Wesley Harper. I am the Executive Director of the Nevada League of Cities and Municipalities. The Nevada League was founded in October 30th, 1959 as the Nevada Municipal Association by all of the incorporated cities in Nevada. In 1995, the League changed its bylaws to allow membership of non-incorporated entities such as GIDs and towns. 1997, the League changed its name to reflect their inclusion, adding and municipalities. In 2020, March 1st, I was selected as the executive director. The 9 months prior to my selection, the League had exactly one staff member who was the administrative manager, Joe Walker. Joe has been with the League, it'll be 29 years this September. The 10 years prior to my selection, outside of that 9 months, the League has had two staff members, an executive director and Joe. When I was selected, the League had 24 member municipalities. North Las Vegas had withdrawn from the League during the time of my predecessor. Today, the League has 25 members. North Las Vegas returned. We have spent time trying to understand and learn how to increase the value of partnership between the League and its member municipalities. So as I mentioned, I was selected March 1, 2020. In about a week, we went into lockdown for COVID. About 6 months or so after the lockdown, I really had the opportunity to start engaging with members. I spent 2021 visiting every member municipality, taking tours, having a lot of conversations. Also spent a lot of time engaging with the National League of Cities and some of our sister state municipal leagues. Primarily our neighboring states, so Utah and Arizona and California. I spent the most time with them. And in these conversations with all these entities, as well as our member municipalities, we developed a survey to learn how to increase the value of partnership and the role of the League with the member municipalities. That survey was done October of 2021. That survey informed a strategic plan. That strategic plan laid out basically the roadmap and framework for partnership. The One Nevada Plan is the embodiment of the action plan based upon that strategic plan. The strategic plan and the One Nevada Plan and the associated new dues formula to empower the One Nevada Plan were all ratified by the Board of Directors on January 31st, 2022. Pursuant to moving directly into action with the One Nevada Plan, we then brought on a member manager whose chief responsibility is bilateral communication with each member municipality in order to understand the evolving priorities for the League to be able to be directly responsive to each member municipality. So the One Nevada Plan is really a bold new direction for the League to take. It is grounded on 4 principles: advocacy, communication, education, and economic development. I will give just a brief synopsis of each of the 4, and I'm open to questions if you want to dive deeper and get into the details of any of these. Advocacy is about how to promote the municipal priorities of our members at the federal level and at the state level. Communication is really about the bilateral communication that I mentioned and the member manager is the resource that we primarily rely upon in order to effectuate that plan. Education is about standing up an education program for elected officials and professional staff on two levels. One, the seasoned veterans that have been through it, but could always use more tips as how the landscape continues to evolve. Same with the professional staff as well. And also orientations for newly elected public officials and newly hired professional staff. We are doing that through research with the National League of Cities. We spent a lot of time with, again, our partner state municipal leagues. We are, in fact, going to California next week. California has a major education program, and the height of their program is called the City Leaders Summit. It's a 3-day, I would consider it a mini conference. So the member manager and I will be there to learn how they do it, what their format is, how the participants react to it. We'll go bring back the information to our executive board and then try to determine the best way to incorporate what we learned there for what we do in Nevada. In addition, we've been in communication and consultation with Pool Pack. They do training as well. We want to complement what they do. University of Nevada, Reno has a power program. We are in consultation with them as well to figure out how we take the best aspects of power and incorporate that into what we do here. Lastly, economic development. The league is not looking to be a lead in economic development, although we can if asked. What primarily we are looking to do is optimize the relationship between each of our member municipalities and the regional development authorities, which they typically operate with. Also providing technical expertise with respect to any in-house economic development departments. I have a background in economic development. I was with the Governor's Office of Economic Development for a while. And so this is a space where I have expertise and relationships. It seemed like a natural place for the league to extend service. By the way, that is unique. We are the only league in the country that does that. Other leagues do not get into the space of economic development. And to this point, other leagues do not have the same level of engagement given the One Nevada plan that Nevada is doing. This model is unique in the country. So with that, I will pause let me talk about the increased request for dues. When we presented the One Nevada plan to the board of directors and to the executive board, it came with a request to increase dues contributions in order to build the capacity really to implement the One Nevada plan. There were several cities that signed up immediately. They liked the direction of the plan, believed in the vision, and those cities are Carson City, Las Vegas, North Las Vegas, Fallon, Kingsbury, and West Wendover. We did not make the dues increase compulsory for membership, and so cities have the option to increase their dues above what they've been paying annually, but not to the level of the request of the One Nevada plan. 3 cities have elected to do that. That's Gardnerville, Winnemucca, and Fernley. And I am talking to every member municipality at their city council meetings, their town board meetings, their board of supervisors meetings, explaining the plan and learn where cities are. The goal is to make sure that our league stays complete to meet cities where they are. All cities have seen the value of the One Nevada plan and are enthusiastic about it. And it's a value judgment for them to decide at what level they are looking to contribute. Also, before I have questions, I would like to mention that we have a retreat coming up in Fallon, June 8th through the 10th. The purpose of the retreat is about fellowship and relationship building of the elected officials and professional staff of each of our member municipalities. It'll be light on substance, but I think substantial with respect to camaraderie. We have our annual conference in Las Vegas. It'll be August 9th through the 12th. That's going to be rich in substance, and there will be a lot to learn, and we are excited about the slate that we are expected to bring to Las Vegas to present to our member municipalities. So with that, I will entertain questions and answer them to the best of my ability.
Does any member have a question? Supervisor Schutte?
I just appreciate the reply. I had submitted several questions, and thank you so much. And thank you for what you're doing. It's quite the strategic plan, and it's appreciated.
Thank you so much, Madam Supervisor.
Does anyone else have any? And just for the record, when he addressed me as vice president, he meant of the league.
Yes, Madam Vice
Okay,
President of the
sorry.
Nevada League of Cities.
Yeah, we're working on that. No,
Yes.
but thank you. I just thought I'd mention that. Does anybody else have any other questions? It's really a pleasure to work with Wesley and the league, and I am honored to be the vice president and your president-elect for the legislative session. And so I think Stacy probably has that same honor with NACO.
Yeah, I'm vice president now, but our service process is 3 years. So I'll be president-elect next year and then president in 2024.
In 24. I was looking, thinking, boy, Carson City's going to have that legislature on its toes, right? Making it listen.
Oh, it still will, madam.
Yep. I look forward to that. Thank you. If there's no other questions, okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for your
very much. Thank
presentation.
you.
Mhm. Okay, we're going to move on our agenda then to the consent agenda. Is there any request for an item to be pulled? No? Anybody in the public want anything pulled? I didn't see anything on the sign up. With that, then I'll take a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda consisting of item 9A, 9B, 10A, which includes resolution number 2022-R-12, 11A, 11B, and 12A as presented.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we don't, agenda item 13 is not needed as no items were pulled. We're now going to move on to agenda item 14, discussion and possible action to introduce on first reading proposed ordinance for various provisions governing administrative appeals. District Attorney Woodbury, will you take us through this item, please?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor, Supervisors. Jason Woodbury, Carson City District Attorney for the record. I want to begin with a statement of what my office is trying to accomplish through this item. There was a former governor of, not Nevada, but of a different state, who said, good legislation should bring clarity and not confusion. I trust that that principle is common ground between the board and my office and the public that we serve. In this regard, the existing ordinance governing Carson City's administrative appellant process is less than optimal. The current ordinance says an aggrieved party can appeal, but it doesn't define aggrieved party, and it really doesn't provide any significant guidance as to what an aggrieved party is. The current ordinance is entirely silent as to what standard of review this board is to apply, whether it is taking a brand new look at the issue under review, or whether some deference is due to the lower body that made the decision. And if so, how much deference? The current ordinance is entirely silent on that. The current ordinance only tangentially references how the board is to deal with new evidence and new material. And it binds the board if it deems new evidence to be relevant enough to be important. It binds the board to remand the matter to the Planning Commission. You have no discretion over how to proceed with that. That's
very problematic in terms of timing because this board has an obligation, a statutory obligation to dispose of an appeal within 60 days after it's filed. Often there's not going to be time to remand a matter to the Planning Commission for consideration. In my opinion, these deficiencies are problematic. Puts the board in a bad position of having to fill in those gaps on a case-by-case basis. Puts my office in a bad position because the ordinance is not self-contained. When a supervisor contacts my office for legal guidance, if the first words out of my mouth are not, well, the ordinance provides, we have an issue. And those are not the first words out of my mouth when I'm contacted for guidance in this context. The first words out of my mouth are actually the opposite. It's the ordinance doesn't, for instance, define aggrieved party. And here are some external legal sources that you might consider. You don't have to, but you can. So maybe some supervisors are considering those external sources, maybe some aren't, and because they don't have to. That's problematic. And most importantly, the lack of clarity in the ordinance can be incredibly frustrating to applicants and to potential aggrieved parties who are involved in the process because all they have is the ordinance to look at for the procedure. So what my office is trying to do is to improve the clarity of this ordinance. We view this item as the first step in that process, and only the first step. We have drafted an ordinance that reflects my office's interpretation of what the current rules are, expressly, to put in that ordinance. With respect to the aggrieved party, we have gone outside the ordinance and looked to case law and looked to statutory law to provide an option for the board to consider in how it might define an aggrieved party. But this draft is intended as a conversation starter. It is by no means intended by my office as a presentation of what the board must do or what even what it should do necessarily. It's intended as a conversation starter to fill in clarity where there is now confusion. My role in this process is to provide you with an ordinance that is clear. Your role is to tell me what to be clear about, and that's what we're trying to get to today. With that as background, I'm prepared to provide a summary of each section of the draft ordinance. I'm happy to answer any questions as they come up, but a high-level summary of the draft ordinance, I'll try to provide that. So we begin with a new section that's Section 1 of the draft ordinance, and it's like I say, it's a new section, 18.02.057. The existing appellate procedure ordinance lumps all appeals together into that single provision, even though some of those appeals do not go to this body. Some of those appeals go to the Planning Commission. So what 18.02.057 is, it carves out the appeals that go to the Planning Commission into that section. And the reason it does that is that there may be different procedures that apply to that. Section 1, subsection 1 explains how an appeal is filed and the deadline for filing an appeal, which is basically the same process as appeals from the Planning Commission to the board. Section 2 defines the term person aggrieved by director's decision in a manner that's similar to the definition provided for appeals from the commission to the board. Moving to Section 2 of the draft ordinance, which I believe, yes, Section 2 of the draft ordinance, it repeals existing 18.02.060 in its entirety. Consistent with our procedures and ordinance drafting, we have included a new lead line for the replacement of that provision, which indicates that this ordinance addresses appeals to the board, procedures for appeals, standard of review, and standing. And as we have previously discussed, the lead line includes a reference to this board's statutory authority to the power to enact this ordinance, and in this case, that's NRS 278.3195. Section 2 then moves to the operative language of the draft ordinance that would replace the existing language. And subsection 1, which begins on page 168 of the board packet, it's the language that's bold and underlined, addresses appeals that come to the board and establishes several procedural elements. First, it identifies by title who is entitled to appeal, and that is a person who is aggrieved by a decision. The second thing it does is it identifies the body whose decisions can be appealed to the board, and that includes the hearing examiner, the Historic Resources Commission, the Growth Management Commission, the Planning Commission, and there's no substantive change in that, in whose decisions can be appealed, except that the Growth Management Commission is now expressly included. The current ordinance does not expressly identify that Growth Management Commission as a decision-making body that can be appealed. So in consultation with the Community Development Director, the draft ordinance specifically does include that for the purposes of clarity. Like the existing ordinance, the draft ordinance establishes a deadline for filing an appeal, and it establishes the same deadline as 10 days from the decision. Right now, there is a potential problem because the existing language says the letter of appeal and application shall be submitted within 10 days of the date of the decision for which an appeal is requested. The problem, potential problem we see, is that it's indefinite as to when a decision is made. Is it the moment a vote is taken? In accordance with the code, a written decision reflecting the decision is actually generated and produced, but that's obviously at some point after the vote is taken. So is that the moment the decision? Is it the moment that written decision is filed or recorded? Is it when it's sent out to the applicant as required? So what we've done is we've clarified the time of the decision to be the time when the written notice of decision is recorded with the Carson City Clerk Recorder. That's, in my estimation, an improvement because that will have a file stamp date, an indisputable file stamp date. This is when the decision was effective for purposes of the appeal. We have received a suggestion that the deadline shouldn't reference the 10th day. It should be a time certain, 5 p.m., close of business, whatever it may be. I believe that's an improvement of the ordinance, and that's something we would certainly be looking to do. Subsection 2 of the draft ordinance corresponds with existing subsection 4C. In general, our objective in subsection 2 was to make the process more user-friendly for somebody who wants to appeal a decision. Under the existing ordinance, you initiate an appeal through a written letter to the Community Development Director. And the ordinance does provide guidance. Here's what has to be in the letter. But that can be somewhat daunting for someone who's not unfamiliar with the process or doing it for the first time or trying to navigate all that and making sure they're doing the right things. So what we've done is we've replaced that logistical process with the submission of a form that's going to be prescribed by the Community Development Director. And the advantage will be the director can include all the information that they're supposed to submit on the form. So as long as you fill out the form completely and accurately, you'll cover all your bases. And so, like I say, that's designed to make the process more user-friendly. We have received a suggestion that the word address appears to have been omitted after electronic mail in subsection 2C, and that's true. It does appear to have been omitted, so that would be, one thing we'd be looking to address. Subsection 3 of the draft ordinance is a new section that does not correspond to any portion of the existing ordinance, but in practice, it is a situation that comes up. An appeal is received, and it is somehow defective. Doesn't include the information that is required by the code, includes some of it, but not all of it, whatever it may be. The expectation I would have, I think the expectation the public would have, is there would be some affirmative effort on the part of the Community Development Department to cure that deficiency and not just to shove it back to them and say, sorry, no good. And in fact, my understanding is that's what happens. This codifies that and says that's what the Community Development Director will do. Now, it does not toll the deadline for filing an appeal. In other words, you can't submit at 4:59 on the 10th day a defective appeal and expect, you'll get several more days to fix it. So it's incumbent on the appellant to, submit that in advance of the deadline in such a way as to give the Community Development Director time to do that. But, it does toll the 60-day time period for the ultimate disposition of the appeal by the board. Subsections 4, 5, and 6 correspond to Section 4B of the existing ordinance, and this deals with the submission of additional material for the appeal. There's no change in substance as to the submission of new material, but we've tried to clarify when new material may be allowed at the discretion of this board. The new material must be, quote, substantially relevant to the issues on appeal. So it must be both substantial under the meaning of the law and relevant. And as exists under the existing ordinance, there is a requirement that there has to be proof that the material was not available during the underlying administrative process. The substantive change that is made is what the board has discretion to do with the new material if it deems that new material should be accepted. As I indicated right now, there is only one option for the board under the code. The board has to remand the matter to the Planning Commission or to the underlying body. Under this, it's may. So the board has discretion. If it's new material that you want to consider, that you think is appropriate to consider, I should say, you may consider it. If there's sufficient time, you can certainly decide to remand it for new consideration, but it does add that discretion for the board. Subsection 7 is a new provision that doesn't correspond to any existing provision, but its purpose is not to establish any new feature of the administrative appellate process. It's really just to codify the historical practice of the mayor and a commission chair having the agenda management authority to consolidate appeals. If that's the most efficient way to process an appeal, the mayor under this provision would be given that specific authority to consolidate those, as well as the chairs of other bodies under the board. Subsection 8 corresponds with subsection 4D of the existing ordinance and simply reflects the 60-day statutory deadline for disposal of the appeal. There's no substantive change in that. Part of subsection 9 corresponds with the current ordinance and part is new. So the last section of subsection 9, which includes paragraphs A and B, retains the provisions of section 2 of the existing ordinance, in that it simply says the board may affirm, reverse, or modify the decision on appeal, and that the board will be guided by the statement of purpose expressed in NRS 278.020. That provision is required by statute. So no change there. The first sentence of subsection 9 establishes a standard of review for the board to apply to an appeal and sets that standard as an abuse of discretion standard. That's discussed more fully in the memorandum that I submitted as supporting material, and I leave the discussion of that with that. Subsection 10 corresponds with section 3 of the existing ordinance. Simply says the board's decision on an appeal is final. No change to the law, to the existing law with that. Subsection 11 corresponds with subsection 4E of the existing ordinance. Just requires notice of the appeal in accordance with 1802.045. Again, no change to current law with that. Subsection 12 provides a definition of the phrase person who is aggrieved by a decision. As I indicated at the opening of my remarks, the existing ordinance does not provide that definition. It's an issue that is commonly encountered, and it is, as this board knows, a source of frustration. I would like to reiterate that the board has discretion over the entire ordinance and over this in particular. The draft ordinance provides one option for that definition, but it is not the only option. The board can choose to accept some of what is presented in the draft ordinance, all of it or none of it. So let me explain how the draft ordinance defines that term. There is one categorical person defined as an aggrieved party under the draft, and that is an applicant whose application has been denied. So that person is categorically an aggrieved party. For the others, for anyone else, there is a condition precedent to establishing yourself as an aggrieved party, and that condition precedent is that you must appear in person, through a representative, or in writing before the original decision maker. This comes from subsection 4A of the existing ordinance, which states any aggrieved party may file an appeal provided the appellant has participated in the administrative process prior to filing the appeal. The principle behind that is self-evident. It's the idea that before you make a claim that an outcome is wrong, you have to participate in the process and try to make the outcome right from your perspective. My office didn't particularly like the existing language, participate in the administrative process, because that's pretty vague. Does it mean I went to community development and looked at the application? Does it mean I emailed the community development director or a planning commissioner? Or does it actually require you have to actually go to the meeting? So we've tried to clarify that using language taken from the enabling statute. So that language is where it comes from, that language that a person must appear either in person through a representative or in writing before the original decision maker. We believe that language helps clarify what it means to participate in the underlying process. That's a condition precedent. So if that condition is satisfied, the next thing that the board would look to under the draft ordinance is the person's relationship to the decision. And that's addressed in subparagraph 1. And this is another categorical rule. Any person who is entitled to notice of the application that was the subject of the decision meets that criteria, has a sufficient relationship to be an aggrieved party, period. So if that person entitled to notice does the condition precedent, participates in the process in this way, they are an aggrieved party. Subparagraph 2 addresses the potential of an aggrieved party who is not within the noticing area. And what subparagraph 2 says, that that person must possess a real or personal property right that is adversely affected by the decision, that the adverse effect must be substantially different from any right of the general public that is affected. As explained in my memorandum, that language comes principally from 2 Supreme Court decisions in this general area, that being the Kay versus Nunez case and L&T Corp versus Henderson case. I want to be very clear about this part to avoid any confusion. That language is not binding. You have 3 levels of decision-making that in this process. You have the original decision, you have the administrative appeal, and you have judicial review. These decisions that we took language from were decided in the context of judicial review, so that 3rd level. The Nevada Supreme Court, other cases, have made clear that standing for purposes of judicial review does not necessarily need to be the exact same as standing for this board, for an administrative appeal. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. Now that's different in Clark County. Clark County is subject to a provision in the ordinance that basically sets who an aggrieved party is for purposes of the administrative appeal, and it's the exact same as it is for judicial review. But that provision in that statute doesn't apply to any other county, but not to Carson City. Hopefully I've been clear on that. That doesn't necessarily, again, mean that they have to be different standards, but they can be. And what is presented in the draft ordinance is a legally defensible definition of aggrieved party. It can be defended legally. So finally, Section 3 of the draft ordinance is the section that repeals existing CCMC 18.06.070. That section of ordinance deals with, basically replicates, for the most part, the ordinance that 18.06.02.060. So rather than having it in 2 places in the code and potentially creating confusion, it's our recommendation, or the draft ordinance would repeal that and just have all administrative appeals from HRC are addressed under that draft ordinance. That is the sort of high-level summary of the draft ordinance. Certainly, I would invite Mr. Yu, who's the primary author of that ordinance, to offer any comments if he thinks I missed anything important that the board should be aware of, but subject to any of his comments, that's the summary.
Thank you so much. So one of the things I'd like to start with, and maybe on the benefit of the public comments that we received and the public that is here. So the accusation is we want to stomp on the voice of the public. I mean, I'm paraphrasing all of the emails that came in. And what I want to do, if we may, as a board, is to really concentrate, I believe, in the section 12, which is also 0572, is what is an aggrieved party. And I'd like to, if we can, separate two issues. So when we're at the Planning Commission, the general public, what we would call general, not an aggrieved party, has full access and opportunity to indicate their pro or con for a particular agenda item or project that's up for review. So is that accurate? That there's nothing preventing the general public from testifying? They get their
That's
3
correct.
minutes and can come and say anything that they want. This particular ordinance that you're working on is for the next set of the standard to say who is aggrieved. And so what I want to concentrate on, if we can, is, especially for all of the public, when I read this, I read it as you're this or that, and if you're not one of those, you also have to get to the and. So I'm very concerned about the ors and the ands, and that everyone is understanding the as written. So if I testified, I'm the general public, I'm Lori, and I went and said I don't like the Lampa project, who cares, right? I don't like this particular project. And so I object to the Planning Commission because I think it's going to crowd the streets, going to give us too much traffic. That's a common one we hear. If I read section 12, I'd make the first part, right? Because I appeared in person through an I appeared, or I did that in writing, like these individuals did that wrote their emails for public comment. So I make the first level, is that correct?
Yes.
Pursuant to this, I make level number 1,
Yes.
okay? But then where I want to talk about it, it says, and I have to meet number 1 or number 2. So that's an and. So I got to get through the first part, and then I have to meet condition 1 or 2.
Correct.
Okay. So my question becomes, is that because is there a Supreme Court? There was an individual that said, have you studied all the other court cases out there? Because the one from Douglas County said that the people's voice counted or should be given more count. I don't know that I read it that way, just that that was a component of the discussion. But that's my question really, is if they participated in the lower body with a written comment, and I want to be clear to everyone, would that also include the guy from Douglas County that testified, the guy from Washoe County that testified? Because they participated. And that's where your number 1 and number 2 was trying to confine it to a Carson City property. So I'm just trying to get clarity, even for the public, if we were to open this up and say, you just had to have participated in the lower level. And if you did, you can be an aggrieved party. Would that be legal?
It would be legal.
Okay.
It would be legal, and that essentially is the process that's mandated for Clark County. If you show up and have some participation, then you have standing. Well, I guess if that's your question, would that be legal? That would be legal. Whether or not someone is an aggrieved party, they are entitled to offer input about a case. So there's 2 separate issues. Who can offer input? And the answer to that question is everybody. The question that's addressed in the ordinance is who can appeal a decision? And the answer to that question is not necessarily, not everybody. You have to meet the criteria of the ordinance, whatever that may end up being.
Could we add a definition for aggrieved that says you had to have participated in the lower body's process, and you have to be a Carson City resident or business owner? Can we limit it to that so that we preclude national organizations from having the right to tell Carson City how to do business? Can we do that? I think it's important that the public understands why they think we're trying to squash their voice. You have to recognize all the aspects of this. So if we just left it open, a national organization could come in, file the $250 and say we're aggrieved. If we gave a very broad definition of aggrieved.
I'm not able to answer your question on that. Could you do that? The hesitation I have is by confining it to a Carson City resident or a Carson City business owner, you carve out, for instance, what if the use is right on the boundary? Is that going to violate the equal protection of somebody who lives within the noticing area? There's just some legal issues that we would want to look into.
Do we notice across county lines? So the noticing component could solve that.
Okay.
Solves that issue.
And
What I'm trying to
sure.
get to is for the public to understand the entire issue and what this board is trying to address. And I heard a lot of public comment that they were even mad that people that don't live here that they even thought it was okay to come and have public comment. So it's an interesting dynamic, and I just want a full discussion on the record. I don't think there's anyone on this board that wants to limit public comment or the people writing to us or calling their members of the board or any other such thing. We're just trying to determine for an administrative process and a future court potential process, what were everyone's rights and who could go through the process. So talk to me about general public. So, because that tends to be, unless I, again, have mischaracterized or misunderstood the emails that came in, they want the general public. I don't like the project. I think it's bad for Carson City. It's a general negative. I'm not saying I live next door or any other such thing. Is there case law that supports a general public, a general comment of, I'm not aggrieved, I'm aggrieved as the city or as a citizen of the city? Is there any case law around that?
No, there's no case law that specifically addresses that particular question. But there is guidance in the statute. So the enabling statute specifically references a person aggrieved by a decision. Now, it didn't have to do that. It could have said anyone can appeal a decision. So the fact that the legislature used that term, person aggrieved by a decision is entitled to appeal, the only way to interpret that is to say that that is a segment of the population, because they didn't use the term anyone. Now, how big is that segment? How small is that segment? That's basically the subject of the ordinance. But I would interpret that particular use of that term to mean it can't always be everyone. Certainly, you can imagine a project where everyone in Carson City, and maybe beyond that, would have a significant interest. I mean, it's silly, but imagine somebody wanting to put in a nuclear power plant at the Ormsby House. Okay,
That would be silly.
Every-
Let's put
it-
that
it
on the
is
record. That was
silly,
silly.
but-
okay.
I mean, that's going to have that kind of an impact, where in that particular instance, yes, that could be interpreted that way. But in interpreting the statute, it can't be everyone in all cases. I would say that's an interpretation of the statute.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Giomi?
There's a lot to unpack here.
There is.
First, I want to address some of the emails we got and maybe give the DA a little cover. When an item is placed on an agenda, this is just for the public who may read the agendas, when an item is placed on an agenda, it doesn't mean that a decision has been reached. It means that we're going to deliberate on a decision, because the five of us can't discuss any item that is before us or could come before us in a deliberative manner. I can't call Stan and say, hey, what do you think about this? Supervisor White and the mayor can't go to lunch and say, what do you think? How should we go with that? So the only opportunity we have is to deliberate it here in this body, in this public, as it should be. So to suggest that there was some, as some of the letters did, some backhanded attempt to change the law without public input is just not the way it works. And as you said, Jason, don't shoot the messenger. I mean, any one of us could have something put on an agenda. Staff member could ask something to be put on the agenda. The DA could bring something forward because you've recognized, as in this case, there's a deficiency in the ordinance. But it doesn't mean that you're in support of it the way it is. So I wanted to state that, because some of the letters I read, were almost like casting aspersions, and I'm not comfortable with that, because you were just doing your job. So I wanted to throw that out there. There's some really good things in here. I really like Section 3 because it codifies that we will actively help someone correct a deficiency, because oftentimes when someone who doesn't do this every day, as you said, files an appeal, they don't do it properly, and it may get discarded. And I like the fact that we'll help them fix it, as opposed to just saying, nope, good luck. I like that. I do have a question on 7A. The mayor, if the appeal is before the Board of Supervisors, is it enough to say that if the mayor happens to be absent? Just something to consider. Did it need to be mayor or mayor pro tem or chair of the board? I just throw that out there just in the instance where maybe there's a conflict of interest, she has to abstain, or whatever the case may be. Is it sufficient to say mayor that it would be interpreted to mean whoever's running the meeting? I just throw that out there. You don't have to answer right now. Okay. For me, as the mayor, the crux of the matter is the standing part. And I would just say that I, like the rest of us, don't want to limit public comment. And I equally don't want to limit the opportunity for anyone in the community to make a case that they've been aggrieved. I guess that's the bottom line. I want pretty much anyone in the community to be able to make that case. And I think there's a distinction in Carson City. I think there's a big difference between a special use permit in Elko County, as an example, that may involve a decision in Jackpot, and someone in Spring Creek filing an appeal to say they're aggrieved. I can't make that connection unless it's perhaps the nuclear power plant example, right? I think there's a big difference between that, and I've said this before, we're a tight community. We are not spread out over a huge area. We drink the same water. We shop in the same stores. We breathe the same air. We're in a consolidated valley. And because of that, I feel like we can make an argument that what happens anywhere in this valley could affect anyone else in this valley. I don't like the fact that, as the mayor said, someone from outside our county or even nationally could file an appeal. So I think we need to find a way to take that out. Because quite frankly, if you're not doing business here or paying taxes here, you should either move here and we'll give you a voice, or, you can mind your own business. In the nicest way possible. So I guess, I think the noticing requirement covers the potential harm for people just over a county line. I think that would have satisfied the case where we had the issue with the batch plant. But I guess I would say that I think number 2 can be more broad in definition, given the statement that I just made, that we are a community, that just because it isn't 300 feet away doesn't mean it can't potentially affect you. And I believe there's a way to craft the language, I would hope, given your superior legal knowledge, that, or maybe Dan's, if you don't feel up to the task, that it could be done. So thank you for listening.
Supervisor White?
Thank you. Let's be clear how we got here today. A lot of dispersions cast on how we got here today. This came about because of a general discussion amongst this board in a public meeting that suggested that some clarity was needed. And as I remember it, essentially a tacit agreement set the DA on this course. So to suggest that there's some shady backdoor attempt to suppress civil rights is straight up nonsense. I'd use a better word, but we are in public. I do agree with that Section 12 is really the sticky wicket we're dealing with today. Concentrating on that in the beginning, I think is pretty appropriate, but there are some other sections that I do believe need to be discussed. So we'll finish up with 12 and then we can get back to some other stuff. Regarding Section 12, speaking specifically on page 169, I do realize that 057 would be included in my comments as general. I think we need to keep in mind that there are entities remote from Carson City that do have an interest here that should be recognized. I appreciate Supervisor Giomi's example about Elko, but I think we have to realize that with out-of-state property owners, business owners and snowbirds that don't necessarily spend the majority of their time here have an interest in this community and should be allowed to be involved clear through the very end, even on an appeals basis. So I think maybe in Section 12, if we added a number 3 that says a person that operates in Carson City a legitimate business and maintains a Carson City business license would have standing. I think some language to bring that into the situation. And for me, again, with what Supervisor Giomi said, this is a very compact community. And I believe, as I've read the decisions of the court cases that Mr. Woodbury has presented, I don't think anybody is precluded from filing an appeal and let the process determine whether they do legitimately have standing or if they're just being a burr under the saddle blanket. So I am more in favor of really opening this Section 12 beyond having to have participated in the original underlying meeting of the Planning Commission and the various boards that this would relate to.
Supervisor Jones?
Thank you. I'm going to jump around here for a minute. Under Section 12, when we were talking about property owners, I would suggest maybe you say taxpayer. Anybody that is a taxpayer in Carson City should have that.
No, just resident. Taxpayer wouldn't work.
Well, if you could be
Resident.
an out-of-state person, still have to be a taxpayer here, right? Property tax.
Yeah, but then he owns the property,
Well,
so.
okay, same thing.
Right.
How many appeals have we had over the years? Say the last 10 years.
I don't know. Hope probably would be in a better position to.
Not many. In the last 6 years, I'd say we maybe have had 5.
Thank you.
Were those like multiple appeals, like what we just experienced, or onesie-twosie sort of things?
I don't recall any multiples with the exception of what you just had.
Thank you. I acknowledge we probably should clean the language up, but I'm very comfortable with the existing statute. How long, it's been in existence over 20 years, right?
Since 2001.
Yeah.
It's been somewhat amended, but
Well,
in substance since 2001.
and our DA is going, right now, going through and upgrading all of our statutes, and this is a good reason to do this. But to make drastic changes, I'm very comfortable with what we have, and I would just like to see us keep this.
Mr. Yu?
You know, I thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to make a quick point on the record in response to Supervisor Jones's comments, which I appreciate. I did want to emphasize and remind this board and the audience, the public as well, that Supervisor Jones is exactly correct. I mean, you know, we've revised this ordinance as part of this code project. You know, this board has discussed several times over the course of the last couple of years the importance of going through the entire code, all 21 titles of it, but specifically directed our office to engage with Title 18 first, because that governs land use and zoning throughout Carson City. With respect to Title 18 appeals, that's something that's immediate before the board, and it comes to the board and it's a recurring issue. I would just note for the public and for this board that regardless of any appeals that have come to this board in the past few months, Title 18's appeal provisions would have been drafted the same way, whether it was submitted today for first reading or if it was submitted 6 months ago, had we had the time and resources to get to it 6 months ago, or if it had been submitted a year and a half from today. It would look exactly the same. That's partially in response to some of these comments we've received from the public that there's some sort of backboard dealing or there's some sort of intentional, deliberate attempt at stifling comment or preventing people from participating and having standing in the administrative process. I mean, everything else, and I certainly won't be redundant with respect to what Mr. Woodbury has already said on the record. I would note, however, while I have the floor and the microphone here, if you would indulge me, Madam Mayor, that I'd like to point out, aside from the fact that this is part and parcel of the code revision project, a multi-year project. Wouldn't look any different today, 6 months ago, or a year and a half later. There were some comments earlier about, well, we can't forget about this Nevada Supreme Court case that was issued recently with respect to the appeal that occurred in Douglas County. We're certainly mindful of that case. I'd like to point out and just clarify for the record, however, that that Nevada Supreme Court case didn't really have anything to do with standing. What that Nevada Supreme Court case involved was the court's recognition that it was okay for the governing body of a local government to consider public comment. And that was it. And there's nothing in this ordinance that deviates from that proposition of law that's been issued by the Nevada Supreme Court. So I wanted to be clear on that point as well, again, for the benefit of the public and for this board. But then also with respect to Douglas County, I'll point out that their standard of review is de novo. It's not abuse of discretion. It is different from this ordinance. But as Mr. Woodbury pointed out earlier, we're not making a recommendation to this board as to what the proper standard of review ought to be. That's essentially a gap filler. We had to provide some draft form so that this board had a launch pad to discuss. We cannot simply bring something in pure skeletal form where it's all just missing blanks, because then you really have nothing to work with. So this is a beginning product. It's a vehicle. We've kind of fleshed it out a little bit for this board, but all the component pieces are certainly up in the air for this board to decide on as matters of policy.
Thank you. Supervisor Jones is,
Yeah, I just want to thank Jason and Dan both for all their work. And I know you're taking a lot of heat for something that wasn't your idea. And I want you to know I appreciate it.
so what I'd like to do, I think the only one that I heard that had some other discussion points, so in our normal process, we tend to go page by page. So if there's some member of the board that has an issue with something, we'll start on page 166 because Supervisor White had indicated he had a couple other little things or something to discuss. Or
That would
did I
be in
misunderstand?
section 9.
Oh, you just had something. Let me
Yeah.
let's stay
Right.
on task just
Yeah.
to make sure there's no one else. And nobody had anything. I'm looking for hands raised on 166. We'll come back on 167 for the discussion on aggrieved party after we take public comment. So nothing on that one.
So Mayor, just to clarify, we would consider the language in, sorry, I'm losing my spot. 1802-057 to B 1 and 2 to sort of mirror 12B 1 and 2 or whatever we decide.
We'll get those aligned and do that after public comment. So what I heard is on page 168 under 2C, we were going to add address. That was a clarifying
2C.
correction, right? And 2C, electronic mail address. And then also adding the time, close of business, 5 PM, just so that the public, again, is aware it's not midnight when there's no one there to accept your grievance or your appeal, excuse me. So we were going to add time. Was there anything else in those sections that a member of the board went? Okay. Then we, on page 169, on 7A, is it automatic, Mr. Woodbury, that mayor, automatically by other rules, the mayor pro tem is the next presiding, or should that be added for clarity?
The mayor pro tem, I would be comfortable if the mayor was absent or had to recuse, that language from the charter, the mayor pro tem serves as acting mayor. The only thing that was triggered in my mind is if both are absent or recuse and somebody else has to be designated as the presiding officer over that
You want
meeting.
clarity or
So
conformity on?
if we can just get, general direction to
Okay.
address that issue,
Okay.
we'll figure it out.
So we'll work at that one. Again, we're going to save 12 for after public comment.
Okay.
Is there, okay, and excuse me, you had something on 9, the
Yeah.
standard of review? A and
Again,
B?
because we are asking for clarity, we are wanting this to be something that somebody that is not educated in law can actually have a firm understanding about what's going on. I would like to add from page 164, those 4 criteria there. And I'd like to have those in there because as section 9 references NRS 278.020, that NRS honestly is so brief that it doesn't really cover what the job of the Board of Supervisors is supposed to be. Those 4 criteria is what we're really supposed to be doing when this appeal comes. So if we insert those here at section 9, I don't believe that gives anybody an excuse to not follow the links, but I think it will help a
Clarify.
lot if we put those in there.
For the record, you're indicating that it's arbitrary, capricious, a manifest abuse of discretion, or based on a conclusion that is not supported by substantial evidence.
Yeah,
You're
I
just
think-
suggesting to put a little more weight in the definition.
Right.
So that's clearer to the public.
And I think my discussion with Mr. Woodbury is he might have some language a little better for F than what it says there. Well, the one based on conclusion that is not supported by the
Oh,
F
four.
on my notes. that
Four
you don't
on the
have.
thing. Do you have, Mr. Woodbury, did you have a better definition for discuss? Because I'd really like the public to, did you have something?
I got somewhat lost there. We're talking about the,
On 9B, will be guided by a statement of purpose. He was suggesting that a C section be added that mirrors the language from your analysis that was, is it arbitrary, capricious, a manifest abuse of discretion, or he thought you had better language than based on a conclusion that is not supported by substantial evidence? You still don't?
I don't
But-
have better language than that.
Okay.
Oh, that's so.
Perfect.
So I don't have a problem moving more clarity from arbitrary, capricious, a manifest abuse, and the based on a conclusion.
Can you fit that in there? Well, I mean, that's the question, right?
Right. Is that-
Yeah, we can find a logical place to clearly state those 4 criteria.
Right.
And we're doing it a little bit on the fly, but
That's okay.
I am thinking that defining substantial evidence would be helpful, if that's going to be a term we're going to use in the ordinance.
Okay.
Come back, right? We don't have to
Right.
fix it,
Excuse me.
finish it today.
Right. And just the definition generally under Nevada law is substantial evidence means evidence which a reasonable mind might accept as adequate to support a conclusion. Just,
Okay.
and I will,
Leave that to your-
work it out, but
Right.
that's.
Supervisor White, that anything you can put in there that helps the general public have one source to figure out what they need to do to file an appeal is helpful. And I think it's helpful to staff too, because then they can point to that and not have to refer to NRS or case law or anything else.
And just get it in one place.
And I think those, in my mind, would show up as 9, C, D, E, and F.
Or C and.
Or
Yeah.
however,
Right.
however the legal minds think it should be structured and clear.
Okay. Thank you. Did you have a comment? Mr. Yu?
Thank you. And, you know, this is something, of course, that, you know, Jason and I will work on in crafting this language to bring back. One thing that I did want to just mention to the board is, you know, for you all to consider is that while it's great, it's nice to have definitions, defined terms in legislation and in ordinances. There's a fine line between having just enough and having too much. And what I mean by that is that, so for example, if we're going to be basing definitions for terms on some of the language that we're going to be extracting from current case law, that could be changed over time. It could evolve. So for example, although I'm not saying I have any concerns or because it's something we can certainly work with, and this is something that will evolve as we're crafting the language. But let's say, for example, we very specifically confine in ordinance form the definition for abuse of discretion or substantial evidence. Right now, you know, any person who's an aggrieved party, any person who's a member of the public, and I understand there's some difficulty in accessing case law, but you can go to the Nevada Supreme Court, you know, website. It's like with anything else, it's a public document, right? You can find that case. The Nevada Supreme Court says, well, this is what it means to abuse your discretion. This is what it means to have substantial evidence on the record. And that could change between today and a year from now. Now, that's just something for the board's consideration, which is why in preparing this ordinance, there were certain decisions, and the decisions, not policy decisions, but legislative drafting decisions that were made in terms of saying, okay, here's something we ought to define, and maybe this is something that we don't need to define to maintain that flexibility. If that flexibility idea is to align with what the Nevada Supreme Court says. Doesn't say we have to align with what the Nevada Supreme Court says, but that's sort of the intent of creating or establishing a little bit of flexibility within the model of this ordinance. So I'll shut up now, but I wanted to point that out to the board.
Okay. All right, then I'm going to move to some public comment. So before we deliberate on the section 12, so the first I have signed up to come is Paula Peters. Wait.
Just press the button.
Hi, I'm Paula Peters, and I'm a Carson City resident. I had a letter all prepared, but you can tell I've changed it during the meeting, so I'm glad that the meeting is going the way it's going. Okay, so I'm opposed to Section 12 of the proposed ordinance that limits the appeals process by narrowing the definition of an aggrieved party, like I think everybody sitting behind me is. I would support limiting the process to Carson City residents and businesses and those in the noticing area. I agree with Supervisor White that the appeals process should be extended to include people not involved in the process earlier. Someone might not be aware of an important issue until it's been approved or denied, and I think they should have the right to appeal it. Okay, one of my examples, which I still think is relevant, under this ordinance, if I lived on the north side of town, but I'm concerned about a proposed project on the south side of town, and this project will dramatically increase traffic and the risk of traffic accidents. The Planning Commission approves the project without requiring a traffic study or feasibility study. It is not requiring the developer to make any road improvements to accommodate the increase in traffic. All the planning commissioners can vote on this project regardless of where they live, but citizens who don't live on the south side of town will not have access to the process appeal, even though they may regularly drive within the vicinity of the project. The proposed ordinance will also prevent group advocates from filing an appeal unless their real or personal property is affected. Many people in our community are busy raising families and working full-time, and they appreciate the fact that some community leaders will spend their time on issues and speak on their behalf. Carson City is our community, and it is our right to be involved. Most local governments encourage their citizens to be involved. Please do not support the proposed ordinance with regards to the definition of an aggrieved party. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Peters. Next requesting is Mary Bowers.
Good morning, Mayor Bagwell, Board of Supervisors. My name is Mary Bowers. I have been a resident of Carson City since 2001. I moved here from California for a reason. I was moving to a community, a small community that cared about its people. It's a hard act to follow an attorney, but I'm just speaking from the heart. I have nothing prepared. I've prayed on this, and so what comes out of my mouth is from the Lord. But I want all of you to know you are all elected officials. We, the people, all elected you to serve the people. I ask that you take our concerns into great consideration because we live in the neighborhood, and it's obvious why this ordinance is up, and I live in that neighborhood, and I know the impact that it will bring to the neighborhood. And there is so much more open land that I think it's important to update this. Yes, the verbiage needs to be updated. It's 20 years old, don't get me wrong. What you guys on your agenda, what you have to do, I'm glad I don't have to do it. But you need to listen to the community. You need to know that, or we need to know that you're supporting us. Would you want to live next to this? I have friends that live there. They have a 5 and a 3-year-old. They're animal lovers. How is mom and dad supposed to explain to their little one that how come they're going into their building, Mommy, but they're never coming out? So I know that what this ordinance is about, And I ask that, I'm sure once it's all been updated, it's that appeal, okay, I'm going to ask a question. What I'm speaking about, how is this ordinance going to affect it going forward?
Affect what?
The slaughterhouse.
Has nothing to do with it. It's a process. This is solely a process for appeals.
Okay, all right. So anyway,
It doesn't, it's an appeal process.
Okay.
That's it.
And because you went to this one directly, you can honestly say that it's not because of the slaughterhouse.
I can tell you it's not because of the slaughterhouse. We've had several appeals in which our attorneys have had to prepare memos and come to discuss standing and rules and research. Many. We just did one on some water that dealt, it isn't. I have had emails as mayor on every single appeal that has come before us that they did not understand the process. So as Mr. Yu indicated, this has been on the block to review this and do this before the slaughterhouse was even envisioned.
But why did you narrow it down to this one initially? Just, this is number 18, the ordinance? How many ordinances do you have on the books?
If you would please direct your question to the mayor.
Oh, I'm
and
so
I'm
sorry.
happy to
I don't
answer.
know
So
the law.
we as a board chose Title 18 because it is the most interactive with the public. It is the one that had not had revision for 20 years, and we chose it 2 years ago.
This is
So
not the-
please, this
So
had
this is
nothing
just a
to do-
coincidence?
It's its turn in the hopper.
It's not the
For-
first time sections of 18 have been in
That's
front of
right.
this board.
No, we've been doing this for years. So, yeah,
Okay.
I know that you think so, but
Well, that's the
it's not.
appearance.
I know.
I mean,
But we've been
let's
working
call
on
it a
Title
coincidence.
18 for, I don't know, 2 years, you may, Mr. Yu.
Okay.
And I would just, repeat, Madam Mayor's, reply on the record. I will emphasize and go on record to say that passage of this ordinance in this form or in some other form has absolutely no impact on the slaughterhouse appeal. You cannot have a set of procedural rules that go retroactive to an
Yeah,
appeal
that's what
that's
I thought.
already come to this board.
Okay.
And whether that appeal goes to the district court or to the Nevada Supreme Court, what those judges will look at are the rules that were in place before. So this is prospective. Anything that comes to this board in ordinance form, if it's adopted in this form, some other form, it will only have an impact on future appeals,
Okay.
not on the past ones.
Okay. Thank you
So,
very much.
thank you.
Thank you for your time.
No, thank you. The next that I have is Kathleen Simmons. Good morning again.
Good morning. I'm Kathleen Franco Simmons, and I'm speaking in opposition to this ordinance. I have concerns about many of the new provisions in the proposed ordinance, but mainly sections 7 and 12. 7, I believe, in consolidating appellants to one appeal. I think it does, like Chris Carver stated earlier, it would remove some due process from individuals who may have different perspectives or different arguments. On 12, it defines an aggrieved person who is standing to appeal decisions. This change to the municipal code will have an impact on all Carson City residents who expect to have a say in what is and is not allowed with land use in our city. It will prevent most concerned residents from appealing bad decisions of the Planning Commission and other commissions. It will effectively remove an inherent right that the citizenry now have. My sister Renee sent in a letter, and she mentions in her letter that the changes place a burden on people who are not lawyers to try and understand the legalese for what is required to make an appeal, as well as to their ability to be considered an aggrieved party. There's already a large financial burden as well as a time constraint for people to appeal, and these proposals make it even more difficult. I know all of these burdens from personal recent experience with an appeal. I've given examples in my letter of different scenarios where people who now might have standing to appeal would be denied that standing. One of them is that a neighborhood group might not like the impact to their property values and quality of life, that a project nearby but outside the public noticing requirement, that would not be deemed an aggrieved party with standing to appeal. Contrary to the staff report claim that this ordinance is for the benefit of the public and that it is intended to foster the public trust by increasing governmental transparency, it does nothing of the sort. No description in the staff report was included as to how this ordinance meets those statements. No reference was made to a board meeting of how or when the direction to prepare this ordinance was given to the DA to prepare it. There were no minutes of such meeting memorializing the direction that the board gave to the DA. And I think that transparency would require that that should be given to the public. In removing an inherent right of the public to engage and participate in local government decision-making, this ordinance does not benefit the public, and it does not foster the public trust by increasing governmental transparency. Please oppose or deny this ordinance in full. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have anyone else signed up. I'll just give one last chance.
I think, is the mic still on?
Yes, it's green.
Good morning. My name's Robin Orloff. I live in Carson City. I really, really appreciate being able to comment after discussion by the Board of Supervisors. It makes a huge difference, and my opinions have been modified by these discussions. I appreciate that. I appreciate the comments or the emails I got from two of the supervisors to my comments. I think I appreciate the request for clarification of the legalese because it's really difficult, and that's been valuable in this discussion. And I appreciate the comment about community and recognizing that perhaps the aggrieved party should be continued the way it is. Well, I don't know if that was your conclusion, but the acknowledgement that all of us in the community matter and decisions, it's a small town, might affect all of us. I've lived here since 2006, but I've worked here since 1987, and I just love this community. So I'd like to protect, as this goes forward, the ability for the aggrieved party to include someone in the community who is concerned about a project. I find it interesting, thank you for clarifying, there haven't been a lot of appeals over 20 years, so perhaps the appeals are just going to come through when the community gets really mobilized over something we feel is important. And I appreciate in the last appeal process that when a aggrieved party came up, that you did allow comment, and that was up to the mayor, and that I appreciate that. So despite my strong emails with boldness and redness, you know, my bottom feeling is, or my base feeling is, I appreciate all of you and our city and what you're trying to do. So if you just reconsider the aggrieved party, the rest of it, I thought were good suggestions, especially that someone be part of the community or outside of the community who is contributing in business or property. So, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I know it's a long meeting.
It's all right. It's what we're here for. Okay. Ms. Mack, I really don't like to do repeats, but come on.
Thank you. Mr. Woodbury, I would like to thank you for what you said, and I do believe that these are changed, that it is kept simple to where it's in layman language. That would be good if somebody for the aggrieved party. The one thing that's going to stop that is the rates. I am president of the Downtown 2020 group, and when we were doing downtown, these costs were not that high. So they're now $250 to apply for a to be an appellant. They weren't that high way back when.
Oh.
So, and I would also like to say that order to, I've listened to everybody come up and how important it is to listen to the people of downtown. When I was planning downtown as a group, one of the things that came up that we did not plan for was the bike lanes. And that almost got eliminated because I had no idea this was important. But it was, and we met with Muscle Power, and that was part of the process of putting in the bike lanes. I am third generation from here. I'm a resident. I own our home. We own our home. I have a business, and I do have standing. So I'm not sure where that comes in, where you do and where you do not have standing. So anyway, that's all I want to say. I want to thank you again for all that you do, and I appreciate it and letting me talk. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to bring the hearing back up here. So do we have any, so we've gone through the other sections and given direction to the DA's office. Let's talk about the section 12 now on what potential language we'd like to see crafted there. Supervisor Giomi?
Yeah, for me, I like that, first, I like that they must appear at the Planning Commission. I think that's essential. It is the importance of the Planning Commission in the whole scheme of things that they hear as much as they possibly can to make the best decision they can make. So I think it's important for an aggrieved party first to have presented there. I like the language here where it says it can be through a representative in person or in writing. I think that gives people plenty of opportunity to present there and really wouldn't exclude anybody. I like 1 because it covers the issues in the noticing area as required by state law. So I like that. And then in number 2, as Supervisor White and others have suggested, I think it should include property owners, residents, and business owners. I think if we capture those 3 things, property owners, residents, and business owners, I think we're covered.
That's restricted.
I think we're covered. Yeah, it's restricted to one of those 3 people. It would prevent
An organization.
yeah, an organization or even an individual who may have a beef against a particular developer because of a project they were doing in Reno from filing an appeal, which could happen today. So to me, I think that's simple enough. I think it's easy enough to understand. There's no complicated language in there. And so that's what I like. But I see the district attorney, the end of the table, has raised his hand. So I'm thinking he doesn't like something that I said.
Supervisor you? I'm not Supervisor you?
No, I definitely don't want that title.
District Attorney you.
That's too hard of a job. I just wanted to make sure that we're receiving this direction correctly, and I know the board will have to take a motion on it, but so that I understand. So Supervisor Giomi, was that proposed language in lieu of in paragraph 2?
Yes.
Okay, so.
2 would go away the way it is now, and you would do some legal magic and make it cover those 3 areas that I mentioned. And the same would apply to the corresponding administrative decision or the language in the administrative section, right?
In 057.
057.
I think you have to include personal property as well.
Well, wouldn't
The
that?
resident would cover
resident
that.
would cover that.
Somebody lives in Dayton, but they own a trailer house here in Carson.
I
that's a
don't
rental.
know. I'm sorry,
No.
because personal
The
property is a
resident
lot
can
of
do it.
stuff.
No,
Because personal property is, it's not,
No.
it's an airplane.
no.
An airplane's personal property. So that would
Just
include.
own an airplane.
That would include someone who owns an
Right,
airplane.
Too broad.
So I think
Too
that
broad.
language just, and if you wouldn't mind, could you repeat those 3?
Me?
Right, Supervisor.
So, property owner, resident, or business owner.
Right.
So I would just note for the board, and that's certainly something we can craft, but again, for your policy decision-making purposes, the reason right now paragraph 2 under B is written the way it is it's actually intended to be more expansive, because that actually covers the possession, an interest, possession of an interest in both real property and in personal property. That's been adversely affected, right? So it doesn't actually exclude, for example, somebody who does not live in Carson City but may have an interest in real or personal property that they possess and is located here in Carson City.
So would you suggest adding an or? Leaving two and adding an or?
I don't have any suggestion. I just wanted to point that out to the board.
Yeah, I
That
mean, it's just-
that's what the language does right now, so there's
It's
no
too broad,
confinement to that.
too broad.
Forward.
I think we want to
In the
restrict
realm of
it
an
to our own
airplane, I
people.
think a person, the fact that you don't keep an airplane in your backyard, you keep it at the Carson City Airport, you do have an interest in what goes on in Carson City.
Well,
If the example stays with an airplane.
No.
that's just one
Not gonna
example.
do
Personal
No.
personal property is a lot of things.
broad.
It's, I mean,
Parking a car on a street. Yeah. Yeah. No. It's too broad. I like the definition or the issue. You got to notice because you're in the noticing area, so that solves for the Lyon County case, which is what really started the prompting of this for those that wanted to know. That was the first case of issue because those people didn't live here, but they were across the border in Mound House. So there was people accusing us of doing this for the slaughterhouse. You're simply not correct. You're just not. The issue started, the first major one we had before the board dealt with residents that did not live here, and they were being harmed by the batch plant, which was in our city. So I think by having the noticing area, that covers that direct border concern or issue of an impacted by a business that resides in Carson. Being a resident of Carson City, I think that's appropriate. I don't want to see a resident of Washoe County unless they happen to own a business in Carson City. I don't want to give them standing to challenge what we do. So I'm okay with what Supervisor Giomi was suggesting. Supervisor Schutte?
Thank you. So I'm just trying to clarify a little bit the language on 12 on page 169. So how I understand it then, for purposes of this section, a person is deemed to be an aggrieved by a decision if the person, so on the A, submitted the application, B, appeared in person through an authorized representative or in writing. For me, then I see instead of the and, have it an or. Is that
Well,
correct or no?
in mine, yeah.
Yeah, it has to be an and.
Correct. And who satisfies one of the following conditions.
Right.
One of them would be they were noticed by IRS, and two that's where the or comes in. Or two, they would be a resident, a business owner, or
Okay,
a property
perfect. Thank you for the
owner. So the
clarification.
or after one would remain, and in place of two, the existing two would go the language that they'll magically
So two
create.
is more inclusive.
Two would be more
wording.
inclusive under
Perfect.
my suggestion.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was on the, following it correctly. Thanks.
Okay. I don't see any other hands up, so are we ready for a motion? Supervisor Giomi? You can just say
I mean, I'm
as
just going to
discussed on
direct
the
staff,
rector
right? I
to
mean,
bring
we're
it
going to,
back.
right?
Yes.
We're going to, so I will, I don't feel right directing another elected official, but I will strongly suggest as a motion that our esteemed district attorney return,
The first reading of this
yeah,
ordinance.
the first reading of,
As discussed on the record.
well, that's good enough.
That works? That's
Second.
enough?
And so returning with a first reading
A first reading.
basically resets this whole thing, and we are back to a proposal draft to discuss and modify if needed.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
We can go and have it come back as second reading, but I think just for clarity,
Yeah, I
I'd
think
like to
there's
make
too-
sure
there's too
that.
much, I think,
Yeah,
to
I
do
think
a
we just
second
want to
reading.
make sure, so we'll bring it back as a first reading unless, so did I have a second?
I second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. And I thank all the public that came today to testify and to help us in your letters. And I hope that we were able to actually bring clarity to many of you. And thank you, Mr. Woodbury, for all your work. Okay.
Certainly encourage all those folks out in TV land watching the proceedings today. Continue to chime in and tell us what you think of the modifications that have been suggested today.
Thank you. Okay, I know that you just sat down, but it is 11:10, and if we don't take a quick recess here, we've been here since 8:30, so we are in recess just for 10 minutes. Thank you. Board of Supervisors back to order. We're on agenda item 15A, which is discussion and possible action regarding authorization for the mayor to sign a letter acknowledging and supporting the application for Northern Nevada Community Housing for the use of home investment funds. Ms. Sullivan.
Just briefly, Mayor, Northern Nevada Community Housing is seeking to construct a 126-unit apartment complex on the east side of the intersection of North Roop and Northridge. The Planning Commission did consider a special use permit. It was a week ago Wednesday for residential use in a non-residential zoning district and did approve the special use permit. The letter before you was requested by the Northern Nevada Community Housing Corporation, and I'm going to refer it over to Lisa Dayton with Dayton Associates, who's representing Northern Nevada Community Housing, and she can speak more specifically to the request and how the letter will be utilized. Thank you.
Ms. Dayton?
Good morning. I function as the development consultant for Northern Nevada Community Housing in preparation for financing this project, which we anticipate will be constructed in phases. I will be applying for a variety of affordable housing finance funds, and a lot of those funding streams do require an acknowledgement that the city is aware of the project. Support is nice. It kind of satisfies all of checks all the boxes. And then specifically for the home funds, because in Nevada, the use of home funds is the trigger for a property tax exemption. The state of Nevada, who administers those funds, does ask that I get a letter that includes your acknowledgement that the property would ultimately qualify for a property tax exemption.
Does any member have a question? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion which would include correcting the date on the letter. I would prefer it to be May, not March. Thank you.
I move to approve and authorize the mayor to sign the letter as presented with the corrected date.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. That's great. Thank you. And just to let the team know, we will have the Housing Task Force on Homelessness and Things bringing their whole report the second meeting in June. So that fits all in this. Thank you. We're now going to move on to agenda item number 16A, which is discussion and possible action regarding our insurance plans. Ms. Bruchetta.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to send it over to our broker, Kevin, to discuss the particulars.
Thanks. Kevin Monahan, LP Insurance Services. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Mayor. So I'm here to present staff's recommendation for the upcoming medical, dental, and life renewals. I'll start with the medical. It was a tougher year from a claims standpoint for the city this year, so it was a little bit of an exercise this year. On the medical side, coverage was marketed to the entire market. There were other carriers who submitted proposals that were considered, were discussed, and ultimately the recommendation on the medical is to, alongside a couple of minor plan changes, renew with Anthem at a 9.9% overall increase. I think the feeling overall generally was that Anthem provided the best balance of, from a cost standpoint, from an access standpoint, and from a benefit standpoint. So that's the recommendation on the medical. On the dental side as well, that coverage was marketed. The recommended option is Renaissance Dental. They put forth a proposal that included no increase in costs and was guaranteed for 24 months. And the life insurance was renewing with Kansas City Life at a 0% for 2 years. So that'll be a 2-year contract as well on the life insurance.
Wonderful.
I'm happy to answer any questions or provide any more information.
Does any member have a question? Okay, seeing none, and it is budgeted, just for everyone's knowledge, the rate increases we did handle in our budget. So we're safe with this motion that we have the funds. Supervisor Schutte?
I just wanted to clarify on the dental, and I spoke yesterday with Jackie on that. So in the packet, it showed that dental, even if the dentist wasn't a preferred provider, those who aren't preferred providers, it would be 100%. But in reality, it's they're taking the average of what's provided, and so it will still be a very minimal cost. But I just wanted to get that on the record, that was understood. So,
That's, your understanding is correct.
Correct,
Yes,
okay.
it's 100% of an
Customary.
average or customary rate out of network.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, with that, I'll accept a motion.
I move to approve the benefit contracts as presented.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Take
all
care.
the hard work. Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item 17A, which is discussion and possible action regarding the adoption of the resolution for our CSSG and quality of life. Supervisor Giomi, your disclosure, please.
Thank you. And I wish I had printed this in bigger font, I'll say that. NRS, no, would need to be held out there for me to. NRS 281A 420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. In my private commitment, I serve as an unpaid board member for RSVP and for Advocates to End Domestic Violence, both of which are private nonprofit organizations. Both organizations are included for funding this proposed resolution under this item. In my private commitments, I have a fiduciary duty as a board member. Although the recommended funding amounts under this item were previously submitted by the application review work group without my involvement and are already approved by this board at a different meeting, and therefore this item is more of a routine procedural matter, my vote on the passage or non-passage of the resolution may affect the acceptance, denial, or modification of the funding involved. Because the judgment of a reasonable person in my position would be materially affected by my relationships, I will not be voting on this matter.
Thank you, Supervisor Giomi. Ms. Gavrick, would you give us a brief overview?
Sure. For the record, my name is Mirjana Gavrich, Grants Administrator for Carson City. This submission is to discuss, review, and approve the Community Support Services Funding and Quality of Life Initiative for fiscal year 2023, as recommended by the Application Review Work Group and Partnership Carson City Executive Board, and subject to the approval of the Carson City Board of Supervisors. The calculation for this funding for the adult and youth competitive category is based on the U.S. Census for the Carson City population. The Application Review Work Group has made a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors based on the amount available, number one. Number two, the scores of the applications. And thirdly, the Carson City critical needs criteria met by each program. The Board of Supervisors reserves the right to move any remaining funds to unfunded projects if that is the desire of this board. And thirdly, I wanted to go over just a quick, brief synopsis of the applications. Carson City received 7 community support grant applications for the adult competitive category, 1 application for the youth competitive category. The total funding available for FY23 is $411,107. The Application Review Work Group has recommended that $106,360 be awarded to the adult competitive programs. Staff is recommending $21,627 be awarded to the youth competitive programs. And due to the low number of applications, $11,243 out of the $21,627 may be allocated to other applications, again, at the discretion of this board. Staff is recommending $163,120 be awarded to the non-competitive adult and youth programs, and this is year 2 of that program, just as a recap. And then $120,000 be awarded to the Boys and Girls Club of Western Nevada. All of the projects and programs do meet the CSSG program criteria needs and are eligible for funding. Any questions?
Does any member have a question? I do just want to put on the record that I have asked our grants analyst to place this on a future retreat. I think as time is going on here, we need to, on a regular basis, look at everything that we do and see if we're on the correct track doing 5 years, 1 year's annuals, and to look at some other considerations. I think today we should just stay, on track until after we have a retreat to discuss, because as you can see, our applications for youth are just dwindling. And so we may want to look at some other opportunities in different timeframes. But with that, Supervisor Jones, did you have a comment? Question?
Or a comment, so you're recommending we approve these and carry over that 11,000 or
No
whatever?
carryover.
I thought we had a carryover.
No, we could reallocate, we could grant the 11,000 to something else if we want, no carryover.
It's up to the discretion of the board as a whole as to what you want to do with the remaining $11,243 that are in the youth competitive category. That is the funding that we did not use this year because of the low number of applicants.
So where does that go?
Back to the general fund.
Oh, okay, that's.
Right, it
I'm
reverts, sorry.
I'm using the
Okay,
same-
misunderstood.
Okay, I
Great.
approve.
Okay, with that, I'll accept a motion for resolution R13, I think.
I move to adopt resolution number 13.
13. Is there a
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the adoption of resolution R13. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any noes, say no. And any abstentions? All right. So let the record reflect, we have 4 yeses, 0 noes, and 1 abstention. Thank you so much, and please let the review
you.
group know how much we appreciate their work. Thank you. Okay, we're going to now move on to agenda item 18A, which is discussion and possible action regarding the Fuji Park Master Plan. Good morning. Yeah, we're still morning. Good morning.
Good morning. One second. Do I have to do anything special to make this?
You are asking the wrong person.
Miss Warren, he wants to know how to get it to the top screens.
Don't ask any of us.
We have some helpers coming your way. Like I said, it's not us.
Oh.
That's gonna help make it big. Not that. Wrong one.
Whoops.
Yeah, meant to do it on the PowerPoint. It's down below. Thank you.
I don't know if it'll go any bigger.
We can. Click on that.
That.
I know.
Sorry. Good morning. So we've just got a few slides here, not everything out of the master plan. You've all had a chance to review the proposed master plan draft as recommended by the Parks Commission and Redevelopment Authority. So just a quick summary, so we cruise through some of these. This is the master plan with identified different, this is the existing site conditions and what we've got out there right now. And now I don't know how to switch slides.
I think she should just sit by him and do that part. Or let him
Sorry.
talk. Yeah.
So
She'll drive.
and here you see the proposed master plan with, I'll just point out some of the major differences would obviously be the new parking area at the west end that would be designed to cater around large events with power and water sources all the way around the parking lot and in the center medians. The dog park's shifting, obviously, with that west end parking lot, and still having a small dog area and a large dog area. Number 14, you can see there a new pavilion that would also be geared towards events with and set up specifically for vendors and kind of a multi-use pavilion there. And you can see number 18 being the proposed stage area, which we feel like would be a huge benefit to those events that are taking place in the turf, be it car shows, dog shows, whatever the case may be, small concerts, anything like that. Driveway over to the pond area Number one reason we closed that pond is for muddy conditions. So that'll help keep that open and hopefully the door open to more funds from NDOW in the future as they've been so generous with in the past. I did. These are just some inspirational images. Is obviously with that master plan, we haven't designed a stage, haven't designed the dog parks or the west parking lot, but you can see some images there for the stage and pavilion at the top. Also potential playground replacement at the bottom, and some of the existing architecture that's on site. This was a 3D rendering that the consultant put together of, you can see the existing restroom that's there now, kind of helps you envision what that west end parking lot would look like beyond it. And also somewhat of a central area where all the walkways would come together and you'd access the dog parks from there or walk across the park from that point or out into the parking lot. Another 3D rendering of potential stage option. This would have ADA access coming from the exhibit hall parking lot. And then I included this, the Clear Creek Management Plan and the Fuji Park Urban Forestry Report were included at the end of the document. Both these documents were put together by staff. I had a lot of help from the Open Space Division and our arborist. The reason I included this slide was just to show the amount of thought that was put into all of the other components of the master plan in regards to the mature trees that are there, protecting what we needed to protect, and also trying to relocate. You can see all the small green circles there where the dog park is now. Our hope would be to spade those, relocate them within the park into that new west end parking lot or places where they're appropriate, where we've got nice 4 to 6 inch trees that are obviously much nicer and larger than what we're going to buy or get in from a contractor during a project like that. So there was a lot of thought, lots of back and forth with all of the stakeholders, city staff, every department weighed in on different components here, whether it was stormwater, wastewater, water, fire. Every one of them contributed to this master plan with review and comments, and we took all of that into account. So, does anyone have any questions?
Does any member have a question? Supervisor Giomi?
In that, and I don't know if you consider this, in the riparian zone, is there any way to sort of add like a single track or a paved trail or a gravel trail that, or did you have that in there? I'm thinking that tree cover and the creek is such a peaceful place. It would be great to have a way, it would be great to have a way to kind of walk through that.
So we've got an interpretive trail in the
There is
master
one?
plan here. Yep. You'll see it number 10. That trail exists on the south side of the park now, on the south side of the turf.
Yeah, but it just runs basically from one end to the other, right?
Yes, so you can see on the other side, which this is the piece of Fuji Park that is actually in Douglas County.
Right. Oh,
It's
I
our
see.
parcel.
Yes, okay.
Going from the historical cemetery there at
Right.
the west end of the pond parking area, I guess, running all the way out to Vista Grande Boulevard so that it would make about a half-mile loop.
Okay.
We can't really get down into the trees.
That
This
kinda
would
was my
skirt
question.
the edge of it.
Okay.
But because of it being in a flood impact zone,
Yeah.
and we also don't want to impact that.
Yeah, and I'm
delicate
not suggesting that.
ecosystem.
I just was asking if there's a way to, get it in amongst the trees, but it sounds like there's not, so.
The pathway that we're envisioning along that south side would have benches, interpretive panels,
Great.
places where you can enjoy
Yeah.
what that
Okay,
area
thank
is.
you.
Well, and it looks like right there in the middle, there's a crossing walkway through the middle of the trees and a couple of, I guess you'd call them cul-de-sac type arrangements off the path as well.
Yeah, I wasn't clear about that.
So We talked about that with stormwater engineers. You can see the large deck there, kind of between the numbers 22 and 11. What we were looking at there would be potentially an observation deck, and where it would sit up above any water level that might come through there, where you could walk straight off the existing trail there out onto an observation deck and get out into the trees, like Supervisor Giomi stated. The bridge, it's just an idea, and we're not completely sure what the reality of getting that put in there, or what the costs associated with that would be. Those weren't included in the cost estimates at the end of this report. They're ideas that we entertained with the consultant and with other city departments.
Well, and that gives you access to get back in the park. If you're halfway around and can't make it, you can get back in the park.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any plans to enlarge the arena area?
Yes, there is current funding from redevelopment and designated funding from Quality of Life for Fuji Park improvements that were in the direction of the arena, grandstands, that amenity or facility that's at the park. As far as new grandstands or shade over them, I don't think that either of those would fit into the $300,000 that we have dedicated right now. The idea that we've talked about is expanding the arena and getting rid of the permanent pens that are on the outside of it. Those limit the footprint of that arena size. Currently, our arena at Fuji is 42,000 square feet. It's 150 by 280. The arena in Douglas County and also in Fallon, Churchill County Fairgrounds are closer to 60,000 square feet. We do have room, and that's what we'd like to do, is expand the permanent arena size out to 180 by 320, which would require moving the announcer's booth. But I believe we have, within that $300,000 budget, we have the money to move the announcer's booth, expand the arena, and maybe start the design phase for a cantilever-style shade structure over the grandstands.
Well, just in increasing the size of it enhances your promotion opportunities.
Exactly.
You're very restricted now on what kind of events you can have there. So this would, covered structure would be nice down the road, but I think first thing you want to do is enlarge it and make it available for more
I see
events.
that as the priority also. Right. More diverse renting abilities venue.
I think if I recall too, one of the reasons that we had not pulled the trigger on the funding, if I recall, Supervisor Bonkowski and I were very interested in not expending dollars until we had a master plan, so that we were all on the page together, right, to say, are we spending the money in the right place? And so I want to, agree with Supervisor Jones that the expansion of the fairground area is, to me, the first priority, to be able to get that done. So, because then everything else can go from there, and maybe we get more events and can put money back in from the events to do more there. So, thank you. Supervisor White, you had your hand up?
Yeah, is Fuji Park considered a cost recovery facility?
No, it is not.
Okay.
I don't see anyone else with anything up on that, so I'll accept a motion. Supervisor Giomi? Oh, wait, sorry, I take it completely back. I did have someone sign up. So before we take any action, Candy Roper has requested to be able to speak. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Good morning, Mayor and Supervisors. My name is Candy Roper, and I'm the chairman and the show chairman and the president of Bonanza Kennel Club here in Carson City. We have been in Carson City since 1981, held our first American Kennel Club licensed dog show in 1989 at Fuji Park, and we've used this venue annually since that time. We want you to understand the kind of income a dog show brings to a community. American Kennel Club estimates that each entry at a dog show brings approximately 1.75 to 2 people. In 2015, they estimated each person who attends a show spends $685 in that community. We average 800 to 850 entries, so that's between 1,500 and 1,700 people. These people need places to stay, meals, fuel. They shop at local stores. Our shows bring $1 million plus into Carson City, and that does not include gaming dollars. We have made donations to the Parks Department towards improvements over the years. These have included funding for the early sprinkler system, planting new grass and reseeding areas that were bare, and purchasing 50-gallon garbage cans. When Costco was built, we also paid for the drainage culvert on the north side of the park to route the water away from the park. Fuji has been a great venue for our shows. Every year we have judges and exhibitors who come to us at some point over the weekend to tell us how much they love the park, and we want to keep it that way. We do have a few concerns with the proposed master plan. We will lose overnight parking for RVs that attend our shows. We park between 80 and 100 RVs in the lot on the west end mostly. The area from the southwest corner of the grass to the west bathroom won't be available for parking. The amount of open space that either option will take from the grass area for large events could be an issue. The dog park takes considerable space that is currently used for 2 of our rings. The entry gates to the dog park are directly in line with the west bathrooms, and that is where a lot of our exhibitors come in with their dogs. A lot of people come into the dog park and let their dogs loose before they get to the gate to go into the dog park. We have 800 dogs in the park, and everybody always says, oh, it's okay, my dog's friendly, but they're running into a park with several hundred dogs in it. We will also lose parking behind the tree line. We put RVs back there that come for the 3rd day of our shows. We're now a 3-day event, not just a 2-day event. The pavilion and the stage will take space that we currently use for another 2 rings. The new location for the playground, if it were moved to more towards the northeast, would give a little more open space in that area. We have we put at least 7 rings out in the park. They're 40 feet by 50 feet minimum. And we leave room around them for exhibitors. We leave room for emergency vehicles. And so we are concerned about cutting the park up like it is proposed. It's beautiful the way it's laid out, and we're willing to work, obviously. The addition of some showers in the livestock area could be beneficial, and I know that's another large cost to the city, but could be very beneficial to groups, especially that have long weekend events. As the design of the pavilion is developed, we may have some comments. Because we're losing the gazebo, that's the central point of our dog show. the pavilion, would be nice to have a windbreak on the backside of it, at least on the west side where the wind comes down through the valley. These are just some of our concerns. The big one is parking. Fuji Park doesn't have enough parking for large events as it is, and we do have issues at the dog show with parking. Our concerns are long-term because while the new construction is taking place and during that time, we're not going to have anywhere to hold a dog show. Without Fuji Park, there's no Bonanza Kennel Club shows. Carson City does not have another facility that is large enough to accommodate our events. We would like to invite each of you to our tender shows this year. They're October 1 and 2. And there are also an event on September 30, but October 1 and 2 are the large events. So we just want to ask you to take some of that into consideration. The Parks Department has been great to work with, and we appreciate our relationship with them. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So, was the concerns for the dog park, not dog park, for the dog event, was that taken into consideration by the park commission and the vendor that worked on this, and the issues you believe don't have merit or they do have merit?
There were several conversations and emails exchanged with Ms. Roper as a stakeholder, and the initial concepts were shared, and she expressed the concern of fitting the show rings into the lawn. I had demonstrated that we have no problem fitting that many show rings into the new proposed turf size. I feel as though the stage, the new pavilion, and the West End parking lot can only enhance all of the events that take place at Fuji Park. That was the primary focus of this entire project and this entire master plan. It has never been to take away from any of those events, but only make them better. This gives a lot more parking. I don't see any reason why 80 RVs wouldn't fit in that parking lot, and they all have power and water now. And they're not driving across the lawn. I mean, obviously, coming from the Parks Department, a maintenance burden is always weighing on us and taking into account how these decisions affect our maintenance staff. But the dog parks do take up a considerable amount of space, and I will agree with that. Though the comments that we got back on surveys, if I had to guess, I would say 2/3 of those comments and survey responses were from people that go to those dog parks every single day or 2-3 times a week. It's a huge percentage of the people that go to Fuji Park outside of big events. I would have to say that and the pond are the two number one reason, or is a number one and number two reason why Carson City citizens go to Fuji Park. We are lacking in the dog park area around town. And, people don't, when we close Sonoma for a month, people all go to Fuji, or they have very limited places. So to make it any smaller, these dog park, or the proposed dog park footprint is very similar to what's there now. It just shifts it and adds, you can take into account where those dog parks sit now, that's new parking lot. So it's kind of a trade-off on that west end of the park. We're not losing any of that area by shifting.
We're not seeing it. You keep referring to it, but we're not seeing it.
Oh.
Can we put it up? I don't know who took it down.
It should be up.
So just shifting the dog parks over, there's actually a smaller footprint on the west end of the park because part of it goes into the turf. So we're gaining real estate, if you want to call it that, for parking on that west end with that big parking lot. You're getting the RVs over there and giving them hookups, or anybody else. that space that the pavilion takes up, number 14, is intended to be for vendors. So those are vendors that otherwise would have had their easy ups or whatever it is out in the lawn anyways. Number 17 is vehicular access pathway. That's a 10-foot sidewalk connecting the west parking lot to the exhibit hall parking lot, and with the full intention of, getting the vendor vehicles or whatever the case may be, the vehicles delivering the show rings or whatever it is, giving them a thoroughfare through the lawn to get back and forth. The playgrounds are a sensitive subject, and we're undecided whether we even need a playground at Fuji. There was a lot of feedback that we do. The playground that's there now, it needs replaced. That location is nowhere near set in stone. That was more like, let's put a stamp on there that shows that we may or may not have a playground included in this plan. That's undetermined at this time, the playground.
Let me just, for clarity's sakes, to the overnight parking with an RV is only allowed with a vendor special event permit. I just want to be clear on the record. We do not have overnight RV parking at our parks.
You're
It
correct.
is only when you have a special event you can apply then, so the vendors can properly care for their items in that park. So I just wanted to put that on the record so that in case anyone's listening, we are not having 80 RVs at Fuji Park. Nope. Or any other park, that's a good thing to put on the record, but okay. No. Unless it will fund 11 million, no. The sticker shock of this about sent me into orbit, but that's a different problem. Jennifer?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. I just wanted to address one of Ms. Roper's other comments. And we don't have the money to do this whole plan. This is a long-term plan. But this is a great tool for us to prioritize projects within the park, phase construction, and also get grant money to match our existing funds. So we are not going to raise the entire park and do construction and disrupt all of our users. We can be thoughtful how we do it. We've already heard what the board's priorities are as far as the arena goes. And we would work with our user groups and try to have and schedule construction when it's not during their typical use times. And obviously, if it's something that involves turf irrigation or tree planting, we do have seasons that we need to be able to do that. But with other projects, a lot of these can be done in the winter when we're not typically heavy use, and we would work with the organizations to make sure that they're minimally disrupted.
Thank you. Any further?
Adding, paving that pond parking lot also improves opportunity for vehicles now that RVs can't get up in there, generally speaking. I wouldn't want to take a trailer up into there or a motor home, but paving it would provide that. Just a quick question. It's not material, but it's just curiosity. You show an entrance, and I should ask you this before, off of South Carson Street. Do we have that? Do we have that legal entrance?
No, we don't. That was included in one of the previous conceptual master plans, I believe 2003 or 2006. That was shown there with a big LED reader board.
You think there's any chance we can get access like that? Because I'm thinking it's pretty dang doubtful.
The hoops to jump through with NDOT would be very complicated, and I don't see that proposed improvement as highly realistic in any way or a high priority. I wanted to include it because it was part of previous conceptual master plans, and I guess it's a daydream.
No,
It
I
would
think
be nice,
I
but
definitely think we should include it. I hope we don't have our hopes pinned on that happening
No.
because
That idea
it's
was
pretty
hatched over
unlikely.
10 years ago.
Yeah, no, I remember actually.
And I think it's important to say that it's included in a plan. So if NDOT ever does corridor improvement plans, we can say, hey, we have this plan. Can we incorporate it into your project? And it would more be that way rather than the city initiating it, I think, from a realistic
Yeah,
standpoint.
great idea. Thank you.
Supervisor Jones?
That east parking lot between Bodine's and the arena, that's a shared parking lot, right? And if I
Yes.
recall, the agreement says Bodine's gets first crack at that if there's an event or something, or they're having an event.
There is an agreement that was approved by the Board of Supervisors between the city and the owner of Bodine's. It was for, they contributed, I think, $1 million toward the construction. And then there's some shared maintenance responsibilities in there for like snow plowing and things like that. As far as future improvements, we would probably have to get back with them and look at that agreement if we wanted to
No,
change
what
anything.
I'm looking at is, can you block this off for, say, her event? Can you block this east parking lot off and say it's to be used only for a
I think
special event?
I think in the agreement, and I'd have to go back and check, but I believe we always have to provide access for them to be able to access that portion of the parking lot.
Yeah.
We can notify them. We included them in the master plan process, the survey, to get their feedback. And we can notify them before certain events and request certain things. And they haven't been a roadblock, from my understanding.
Okay, we'll give this a try again. Do we want to make a motion? It's okay, it's important, and I apologize. I caught it right at the end. You may. Please. You have to come up, sign in.
Robin Orloff again. I was looking at that plan, it looks awesome, and in keeping with what you've said about getting close to the Clear Creek, I think it's really neat that they're putting a path on the south end, and it'd be awesome if there could be an observation or a bridge. I'm wondering, is the dog park going to be changed to grass, can you say? It will
You have
be-
to direct all questions here.
I'm
Robin,
sorry.
I'm sorry.
Will
it's
the
not
dog
a
park be
staff-
grass?
Yeah.
Yes,
He
okay.
had a picture of
I
a
thought it looked
conceptual-
green. I thought it looked green, and I'm
Green?
sure
Thank
that's
you.
a.
It's
that-
just conceptual, but
That's
yes.
probably, what the public wanted in the survey, but personally, I like DG because it's easier to pick up the poop and find it, so. I thought I read in the plan that there's going to be some OHV ability to have OHV events over in the track area. I believe I read that, which I think is awesome. I mean, last year there was a fast track races, the donut eaters versus the hose draggers. I mean, it was really fun. It was a 2 or 3 day event. It brought in revenue. And I think this year there's scheduled to be some kind of dirt bike training that my husband has signed up for. So I think in coordination with the OHV area, if that's what this area is going to include, it might be a nice connection because the kids love to run in the track. So that's it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for letting me speak.
Okay. All right. So with that, I'll accept a motion. Okay.
I move to approve the updates to the Fuji Park Master Plan as discussed.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Roper. I will state on the record that I'm taking staff at their word that they will work with your organization to not be disruptive. Oh, good. I really believe that they will, and I trust that their measurements are good to make sure you can get your rings and accomplish it. It's quite the show. Thank you for all your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and board members.
Okay, we're now going to move on to item 18B on the agenda. And just so this board is aware, we will have our closed session today. So this one is on the due diligence and the commencement for the Ash Canyon property. Ms. Boyer and Mr. Nellis, take us through this, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Board of Supervisors. This is Lindsay Boyer, Open Space Manager for Carson City. I do have a short presentation as well that I'll be bringing up. Thank you. Okay. So I just want to first start off and say thank you for the opportunity to come and speak about this property. And I also want to say thank you to all of Muzzle Powered and other individuals who came out today to provide their support or provide written comment for this project. Just to give you guys an orientation on where this property is located, this is a 81-acre property located in the Ash Canyon area. It's highlighted in blue here. I'd like to point out that there is Carson City Open Space owned property to the north the recently acquired Eagle View open space. And there's some public works properties to the south, as well as some state-owned properties to the east. So surrounded by city-owned or public lands. And Ash Creek runs directly through this property as well. So within your packet, it includes the open space acquisition assessment that kind of goes through the different criteria that we look at for priority acquisitions. So I just want to go through a little bit more in detail some of these preservation criteria that we've highlighted that makes this property highly coveted from our perspective. So I think one of the biggest reasons for potential acquisition and preservation of this property is watershed protection and water quality. As I mentioned, Ash Creek runs directly through this property. For those of you who don't know, Ash Creek directly feeds Carson City's drinking water system. The water goes into an intake valve just below this property and is sent over to Quill Water Treatment Center to be treated. So it is an important component of our drinking water, and it is in a source water protection area. The next biggest reason that I like to highlight is trail connectivity. You all heard from Muscle Power today just how important this trail is to their community, our entire community. Even folks who are not living in Carson City are coming here to utilize that trail as well as the trails in this area. The Creek Trail is one of the most popular trails in Carson City, even though it is on private property. I'd also like to note that given all the recreation pressure in this area, we don't have enough trailheads in the west side of Carson City, and this property would be an awesome location for a potential trailhead as well. Other things that we always talk about here in open space is protection of wildlife habitat and migration corridors, and this property represents a stellar example of habitat here in Carson City. You can see here a picture of the aspen groves that run directly through the property, stunning fall colors, but most importantly, provide really important habitat for migratory birds. There's a number of raptor species who exist on the property, such as bald eagles, several owl species, goshawks, and even blue grouse, which are a really unique bird, live in the upper Ash Canyon area. So between the creek and the aspen groves and some of the mature stands of Jeffrey pine that are up there, this represents a very unique habitat type in Carson City that we don't have and needs to be preserved and protected. The creek there also does provide a lot of habitat for fish, amphibians, all of those things as well. So it's an awesome area for wildlife habitat. And then another big reason to cite this property has been identified in the open space master plan as a high priority for acquisition. This property has been on our radar for a very long time. We learned about it being up for sale in early April and have worked to move as quickly as possible on getting this before you for consideration. It's identified in the hillside zone in the open space master plan. So while that's not within the skyline restriction zone specifically, it is highlighted as, a viewshed protection area. I already mentioned the property connectivity aspects with surrounding city-owned land, but that just enhances our ability to manage the property and also creates excellent wildlife corridor connectivity. So the open space program does have sufficient funds to support the acquisition of this property under our quality of life funds. And one last thing to note related to this property as it relates to our discussion and consideration today is, it's very highly coveted. We knew going into this that there would be a lot of offers on the property. We did learn yesterday that the property is under contract and is set to close in early June. But the seller is willing to entertain the city as a backup offer. So if for some reason that were to fall through, we'd still like to move forward with getting permission from you guys to do our due diligence, if that's the way the board leans today. I also have Robert Nellis, our real property manager, with me today. So if you'd like to add anything.
Robert Nellis, for the record, I think she summed it up well. We just, like she said, we learned yesterday that the property's in escrow. However, things can happen, so we'd still like to seek your approval for resolution to move forward in the event that offer does fall through.
Supervisor Giomi?
So we'd be in second position then. And any sense as to who the offer is from. It's zoned conservation reserve, isn't it?
So what can
That's
they do
correct.
with it?
So, I mean, they really can't do much with it.
Can you put a house on it? And is CR allow a single-family
Can
residence?
do one.
Under
One.
conservation reserve zoning, you're allowed to have one dwelling per 20 acres. So it's an 80-acre parcel,
Yeah.
potential for 4 homes, but topography would probably prohibit that.
So I just in general have a question, and maybe it's from numerous emails that I'm getting and things, but the quality of life funds provides for the acquisition, and then there's maintenance dollars for anything that we acquire. But my question becomes, as we gather more and more open space or parks just in general, the perception of the cleanliness of the trails and things of that nature. So can you address that? I know that Muscle Power does a lot of work to help us keep them clean, but, and I'll just be specific because people are maybe trying to do beautification work themselves within areas, and that's always in the eye of the beholder, right? Some people like it, some people don't. But can you talk to me, if we were to acquire this, how are we going to maintain it?
That's an excellent question, Madam Mayor. Thank you. Management is always a consideration when we talk about acquisitions. And within the open space program in general, for the last several years, we really have been shifting to more of a management mode rather than acquisition mode, but always keeping our eye open for these kinds of really important opportunities as they arise. So with the quality of life funding, it's split into kind of 3 pools of funding. 40% goes directly to open space, 40% goes to parks, and 20% goes to management, specifically for parks. So with those funds, you know, we in open space use our component to handle the management component. So we have kind of one pool of funding, lots of different line items within that that cover acquisitions and maintenance and management. Our maintenance management line item is one of our highest budget categories, just knowing that that's where we need to spend the bulk of our funds. But if we were to acquire this property, we would definitely be working very closely with Muscle Powered. They would be pivotal in terms of doing the trail maintenance, things like that. We're also bringing on a volunteer coordinator full-time starting this summer. So, you know, this would be an opportunity for them to, you know, work with volunteers to do cleanups as needed as well. But it would be a high priority for us to maintain and ensure that this is kept in good condition, working with partners and staff and volunteers.
Supervisor White?
Thank you. In the explanation on fiscal impact, it says that open space is already spending $10,750 on a contract to do forestry and wildlife related services on this piece of property. Can you tell me what that's about?
Great question. To clarify, open space, as well as several other departments within the city, pay into a fund that goes to the Nevada Division of Forestry to assist us with wildfire prevention, as well as in the event that there is a fire, those funds help support those services. So I apologize if it was a little unclear in the way I wrote it, but essentially those funds would cover any fuel reduction or in the event of a fire, you know, activities on this property, but also, you know, throughout the city and throughout open space. So that's just our contribution for our component of that bigger picture.
So it's not $10,750 specifically to this property.
That's correct.
Okay, any other questions? I don't have anyone signed up for public comment at this agenda item, but I'll do one last quick, just in case. All right, then I'll bring it to the board for motion. Supervisor Giomi?
I move to approve resolution number 2022-R14.
Second.
In a second on discussion, since it is under contract, just so that the record is clear, you will not be moving forward with attaining an appraisal or anything unless it falls out. We don't want to spend money if, the
Agreed,
deal's
Mayor.
going through. Okay, just on the record for discussion. Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carried unanimously. Thank you for your good work. Okay. Yeah, you hate to say, I hope it falls out, right? Because anyway. I know.
Who was the second on that
No
motion?
kidding.
Was, I think it's Supervisor White. Were you second?
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Supervisor White. Okay, we're now on to agenda item number 19, which is our non-action items. Ms. Paulson, do you have anything under item 19?
Yes, just real quick. Our second meeting in May happens to fall on the right date. So we will have the public hearing to finalize the fiscal year 23 budget on that date. We don't have to have a special meeting this year.
Yay. Okay. Does any member of the board have something they would like to report or share? Supervisor White?
Thank you. The NACO Public Lands and Natural Resource Subcommittee took on some information at our last meeting that there's been a federal disaster area declared by the Department of Agriculture in regards to the drought. 13 Nevada counties, multiple California counties, and Arizona counties have been designated as in that drought. Fortunately, Carson City is not one of those counties considered to be in the disaster area. But because we are contiguous to other counties, we are eligible for federal disaster monies for our farmers and ranchers within Carson City. I don't expect there will be too many expenditures for that. Additionally, in the endangered species arena, the Pinyon Jay and the Nevada Railroad Valley toad have been petitioned to be considered endangered, and they will fall in with the Dixie Valley toad, which already has a petition. These two toads are recently discovered and generally live on less than 400 acres out in the desert. So keep an eye on how, huh? Well, we've got to study it and understand. Look for that to interfere with some of this solar activity. Yeah, and a lithium mine. Exactly. So the designation of the Pinyon Jay is also, if it is designated, will also interact very heavily with preserving the sage grouse, because part of preserving the sage grouse is eliminating the cedar trees that come down, interfere with the sage grouse. So now we're going to have a battle between who's more important, the Pinyon Jay or the sage grouse.
Oh, boy.
Stay tuned. News at 11.
Supervisor Schutte?
I just want to give a shout out to Randy Rice and Darren Anderson. The meeting and the Public Works Department on May 3rd, there was a meeting to talk about the William Street Complete Street project. There was a really, really good turnout. And I just thought it was great that the community is invested in this and shared some really good questions and thoughtful responses and concerns. So I was thrilled that there was a good turnout. I would encourage anyone who would like to learn more about the project to visit the project website at carsonproud.com/east-william-complete-streets-project. Thanks.
Yeah, all those dashes are important. Sorry.
Actually, it's not that hard, and that interactive
Yeah,
map is
perfect.
pretty cool.
Okay, I don't
Very
see anyone else with their hands up, so we're gonna move to the final public comment section, which again, I did not have anyone sign up for final public comment, but just one last shot of that. Okay, then we are adjourned, and in 5 minutes, we will start our closed meeting. Thank you all for a good meeting. Okay, well.